Oh, there we go. All right. Sorry, I was muted. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so what I was saying is that we're going to pick up the debate where we left it off last time. The debate between Harris Sultan and Daniel Haqiqatjou. Harris Sultan is the atheist, Daniel Haqiqatjou is a Muslim. I was trying to prepare this study that I had, but I was supposed to prepare it before we go live, but I didn't. The audio is good now? Let me know if the audio is good. Okay, good. Music guy is saying audio is good. This is my fault that I didn't have the study ready. I was gonna have it ready before time, but maybe I'll just show it on the next review. It's okay. This is my fault for losing. All right, cool. Right, so we left it off here, I think at the almost right before the 1 hour mark, if I'm correct. So, guys, if you haven't seen the previous debate reviews, don't worry about it. We're going to treat this as if it's its own video. And if we said something before that you haven't seen, we're going to refer to it. And we're going to mention that what we did in the previous video. So don't worry if you haven't seen the previous ones. Also, I'm going to play just a little bit of this video. Let me know if you have audio of this video.
The reality is...
Audio good from the video? Yeah. Let me know. Let me actually put this at 1.25. Guys, you don't mind if I put this at 1.25 speed, right? You should be able to understand, right? I know you guys are not as smart as I am, so you can't listen to it on double speed, unfortunately. But I think 1.25 is good, right?
To win a war in the pre-modern period, it was all about manpower. The main factor...
Wait, where do we end it? Okay, there we go.
This also reminds me when Stalin was told about the mass scale rapes of the German women at the hands of the Red Army. Stalin
I think this is where we left it
off. They've been through a lot. Let them enjoy. This is literally what Muhammad did. In another instance, a guy named slave girl, and Muhammad slept with her on the very first night. This was so out of let them enjoy. This is literally what Muhammad did. In another instance, a guy by the name of Salama says he captured the prettiest girl in Arabia. When he took her back to Abu Bakr, he gave her to him as a gift. Sahih Muslim 1755. Slavery is horrible, but sex slavery is even worse. And
we already addressed this. We already addressed this last time. I don't like when you say sex slavery is even worse. No, slavery, there are worse types of slavery than sex slavery. Like I say, like slavery when they force you to work in a mine. And you have a life expectancy of like, I don't know, 2 or 5 years in the mine before, I don't know how long it is, but you die on the most brutal conditions, and they constantly have to replace the slaves because they keep dying on the job. I think that form of slavery is even worse than sex slavery. Like kind of like the slavery that they had in South America, in the silver mines, and like if you compare the slavery in South America to North America, again, I know this is a simplification of it, but South America was a lot worse than North America. In North America, slaves actually lasted long enough to be able to have babies, so they wouldn't constantly have to be replaced with new slaves. In South America, slaves were constantly dying on their jobs, so they had to constantly buy new ones because the conditions were that horrible that they kept dying. Like that form of slavery is by far the worst, I think.
And his Sharia enabled it. There's so many other stories like this, but I can't pick them all in 5 minutes.
We'll kick it over to Daniel for his 5-minute response as well.
Okay, so I'm going to address slavery and sex slavery, but let me just be explicit for the audience, since Harris doesn't seem to be getting it. I'm arguing that Sharia law is superior to human rights because Sharia rule preserves marriage and family. Okay, and human rights doesn't. It destroys marriage and family and community and the human race.
Oh, we forgot. I have to have this ready every time. Okay, so I didn't have it ready. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have it ready next time. So he keeps saying human rights violates, like, threatens family. He, like in the previous videos, we've shown that he has not yet shown what how he's coming with that conclusion. Like he's saying, we showed that the articles of the human rights, like the UN version at least, and not only it didn't seem to be anti-family, it seemed to have like many articles defending family. So his understanding of why human rights is anti-family is because, families, marriage rates are low, people are separating, and that seems to be becoming a bit more and more common. At the same time, that human rights advocacy is also going up. So again, this is very simple. I think anybody should know this by now, especially somebody that is a graduate from Harvard should know that correlation is not causation. Just because two things are going up doesn't mean one of them is causing the other one. What our understanding is right now, that an increase in wealth, an increase in prosperity, an increase in economic development causes lower fertility rates, women finding options outside of a family too, and men also. Okay, so again, we're not saying family is not important. We're not saying it's not worth defending, but the problem is not coming from human rights. This is a problem that every country that is going through prosperity is going to have to deal with. And the solution to that is not going to be Islam, obviously not. And also, even though this is a problem that needs to be addressed, like people having sex less often, families falling apart, people being more alone, these are issues that we need to deal with. However, modernity has brought so many good things that if you have this problem, it is a problem that needs to be addressed. However, you can't deny all the things that modernity has resolved for us, like better access to healthcare, less starvation, clean water, so many things that we like child mortality rates dropping, better life expectancy, higher quality of living. These are things that we're not going to give up. So if we want to address family issues and people being alone and lack of sex and stuff like that, you better have a better solution than turning back the clock, right? And we do have better solutions, and we're going to come up with better solutions, and Islam is not one of those solutions.
That's the argument.
And in fact, what we showed last time is that even in Islamic countries, when they develop more and when they have more economic prosperities, even there, you're going to have these issues. This is not like this is a prosperity problem, not like a human rights problem.
So let's move on to slavery. The reality is, to win a war in the pre-modern period, it was all about manpower. The main factor in whether your people would live or die was numbers. So this meant that if you won a battle, you couldn't just let the captives go, because they would just regroup and attack you again or join your enemies. So you only had two options. You either had to kill or enslave. Neither option is good, right? But that's just the nature of war. You always have to use violence against the other side. You either kill or enslave. So Haris, you want to criticize Islam and call Islam barbaric for having slavery, but imagine if I asked you this question. Do you support using weapons in war? Do you support using guns to shoot people or swords to stab people and kill people? Do you support that? Because all of that is violent. All of that is barbaric. Presumably, you'd say, yeah, of course I support weapons and killing, because how else are you going to fight war and defend yourself? Well, that's exactly the point.
Well, okay, so you're missing. Okay, so the guns and ammunition and other weapons can be weapons that increase violence, okay? Or it could be tools that prevent violence. It could be you could have a military and a police and their ammunition as a way to bring peace, as a way to discourage tensions, as a way to keep calm. So just because the nature of a gun or a tank or other weapons is to cause violence, it doesn't mean that it necessarily will cause violence if done right. Yes, they could be used in a bad way, but they could also be used in a way to increase peace and prosperity in the right hands. Okay, that's why we're not going to say like, oh yeah, get rid of all guns and get rid of all tanks and get rid of all the fighter jets and everything. We're not going to say that, because they're probably right now they're actually avoiding more violence than causing violence, right? In a world without like a military held by a state, there will be more chaos. Yes, like there are many things that you could point to that is a lot of harm and misery that is being caused by these guns, but in a world right now that a state is not holding a military, there will be more chaos, there will be more misery, right? You can't say that about slavery, because even if you say, well, slavery can be used win battles. And if you have like an army of slaves, then you could withhold peace. It involves enslaving people. Like it involves, by its very nature, it involves using violence. Actual, like the violence has to be like you need to actually do the violence before you could use it as a way to win battles or withhold peace. With guns themselves, they don't feel things. Like the productions of the guns and the production of the ammunition, by its very nature, it's not causation of violence. So unlike slaves, gun could either be used for good or for bad. But slaves, by its very nature, it requires for you to do the violent part first before you actually use it to win another battle. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you guys see the difference? Like, guns by themselves are not inherently, the creation of process of them is not inherently violent. Then it depends on how you use them, guns and other weapons. But there's no way that you could come up with an equation where slavery is going to cause reduce violence without actually exerting violence by itself. Do you guys see the difference? Does that make sense? Music guy is saying yes. So you can't be like, oh, if you support the production of guns because guns can cause violence, then therefore you should also accept slavery in war. No, there's a difference.
With slavery. In the pre-modern period, you couldn't have war without slavery any more than you could have war without weapons and killing. In other words, if killing people can sometimes be justified, then slavery can also sometimes be justified. And this is exactly what your friend, Apostate Prophet, accepted with open arms in our debate last year.
I don't think the word is justified. I think the word that we need to use is we can understand that people before us lived by moral standards that were inferior to our moral standards, right? So if you want to say like, well, at that time it was like this, okay, justified is not the word I would use because right now we're judging things with higher moral standards, so that's why I wouldn't like to use the word justified. But we understand that if we were living there at that time, we would fall for that. We will justify those things based on our moral standards at that time as well. What we recognize, though, is that we now have superior moral standards. We do recognize that. So that's a problem with religion. That's a problem with your religion, Daniel. Is not that, oh, well, they were living by different standards. Yes, we understand that. The problem with your religion is that it makes those moral standards sticky. We're trying to we try to be better. We try to move past those moral standards, right? We're trying to live by better values, but your religion is just making it so hard for us to keep pushing forward. It's making it hard for, like, religion makes these moral values that we're supposed to be moving past. It just makes them just stick with us longer than they should be.
Imagine in the future, they invent a new technology for war where a laser shoots from space and can directly target any person in the world. And the technology is so precise that there are zero casualties other than the intended target. Then people in this future might look back at our time and say, look how barbaric those people in the 21st century were. Look how barbaric with their tanks and guns and bombs. Would that make any sense? That's exactly.
Would that make any sense? Yes, it would. Wait, guys? Yes, it would make a lot of sense for them to call us barbaric. Wait, this makes our Daniel. This is the example you gave is not in your favor. The example you gave just makes my point. Hold on.
Exactly what you're doing by criticizing Islam for slavery. You should.
Yes, that is exactly what we're doing by criticizing Islam for slavery. He thinks like okay. So he says, let me see if I got this right. Okay, tell me if I'm misrepresenting him. If future generations come up with weapons that have much less collateral damage than the weapons that we have today, and they manage to do what their weapons are supposed to do with much less violence, okay, like much less, mistake, and be really precise, like so much better than drones, so many less innocent people dying, would they look back at us and the way that we did war and call that barbaric? And would they be justified to do so? Yes. Yes, they would be. Like, why are you making it seem like unreasonable? Yes, we will be barbaric relative to them. We will be extremely barbaric relative to them, and they would be justified in calling us barbaric. So you're saying that you're saying like we're doing the same thing with our moral standards to Islam? Yes, that is exactly. Thank you, Daniel. Exactly. Just like future generations, we're going to look barbaric relative to them. Your standards of your religion and your prophet is barbaric relative to us, relative to the morals of our time. This was a perfect example to show you why it makes sense for us, even though, yes, that was the moral standard of that time. It still makes sense for us to look back at it and use our superior moral values today to call that barbaric and to say why you guys are bringing those barbaric standards into the modern world. And that's why your religion is harmful. Hey, was this not an own goal? Was this not like he's trying to give an example to say like, why is this unjustified? But his example is perfect to show why it is justified. Did I misunderstand this? Because this seemed like such an own goal. Hold on.
Just acknowledge that sense. When you can directly target any person, your friend can sometimes be justified. Then slavery can also sometimes.
These things, but those are technical limitations, not ideological. No, okay, D, but we make ideological progress because technology and the economy makes it possible. Let's not kid ourselves. One reason why it was easier for humanity to recognize why slavery is wrong is because Industrial Revolution made it easier to live without slavery. So you're saying like that's a technical limitation, not ideological. Well, so the ideological progress that we made to outlaw slavery was partly because of the reduction of the technical limitations that we had. So these things are related. So let me actually continue. Does that make sense, D? Let me continue. Guys, make sure you guys are making some interesting comebacks to me, but you're not tagging Atheist Republic, so I might not see what you're saying. You need to tag Atheist Republic if you want me to see. Yeah.
Be justified. And this is exactly what your friend, apostate prophet, accepted with open arms in our debate last year. Imagine in the future they invent a new technology for war where a laser shoots from space and can directly target any person in the world. And the technology is so precise that there are zero
Okay, this technology, it's kind of looks a little bit Orwellian, but let's ignore the Orwellian part of it. Let's just assume that what Daniel is saying is that this is a better technology, that the key part is the less collateral damage part, okay?
Casualties other than the intended target. Then people in the world invent a new technology for war where a laser shoots from space and can directly target any person in the world. And the technology is so precise that there are zero casualties other than the intended target. Then people in this future might look back at our time and say, look how barbaric those people in the 21st century were. Look how barbaric.
Wait, so is Daniel kind of acknowledging that we're going to keep progressing and we go to as we go to the future, things are going to continue getting better and less violence? Because like that's pretty base, Daniel. I'm glad you finally accepted modernity and progress. But yeah, so he's like, they're going to look back at us and what?
You might look back at our time and say, look how barbaric those people in the 21st century were. Look how barbaric
we were compared to you. Yes, we were. I don't deny that. Dear future people who are watching this video for I don't know what reason. Yes, we are barbaric compared to you. Thank you for all the progress that you have made.
Their tanks and guns and bombs. Would that make any sense? That's exactly what you're doing.
Yes, yes, it would make sense for them to call us barbaric. Yeah, I didn't misunderstand.
By criticizing Islam for slavery. You should just acknowledge that slavery could be completely justified in certain circumstances, which, by the way, are the circumstances people have lived in for 99% of human history.
This was such an own goal. This is just the example he gave made our case. Thank you for it, Daniel.
Now, if you want to argue that Islam requires enslaving people today, I would say that is not correct. It depends on the Imam. If you read...
It depends on the... Wait, this is another own goal. This is another own goal. He's like, if you think like, what the hell? Guys, he just confirmed what he was supposed to deny. He said, if you say that Islam... Wait, let me make sure I'm not putting words in his mouth. Hold on.
enslaving people today have lived in for 99% of human history.
Am I mishearing this? Like, this seems like such an own goal. Listen carefully.
Now, if you want to argue that Islam requires enslaving people,
oh, he's so clever. He's replacing the word allows with required. Sneaky, sneaky, Daniel. That is very clever. I see what you did there. He's like, if you accuse Islam of requiring slavery today, we didn't say require slavery. We're accusing Islam of allowing slavery. Did we accuse Islam of requiring slavery? Islam never required slavery. He's like, if you accuse Islam of requiring slavery today, we're not even accusing Islam of requiring slavery even back then. Even back at Muhammad's time, it was never required. You were not mandated to have slaves. Am I mistaken? Like, is this part of Sharia that I missed? Like, were you ordered to have slaves? No, you weren't ordered to have, you were allowed to have slaves. This is very tricky. He's going to say, if you accuse us, like, okay, that was back then, but if you now accuse Islam of requiring slavery today, you're actually not required to have slaves today. Well, congratulations. Like, what are you talking about? You were never required to have slaves. That is sneaky stuff. That is sneaky stuff. Because if the accusation, listen to this. Because I thought he said that if you think Islam allows slavery today, it actually depends on the Imam you're talking to. And I was like, well, if it depends on the Imam, then it means it's allowed. So you just contradicted yourself. But then I listened to it again and I realized that he didn't say allow, it says require. Sneaky. All right.
People today could be completely justified in certain circumstances, which, by the way, are the circumstances.
Rezam saying, well, it's kind of sunnah to have sex slaves. Well, I mean, it doesn't, like, it's kind of sunnah to have sex slaves. Not if you don't want, like, it doesn't, like, there's nothing in Islam that says, like, what if you, like, don't want to have sex slaves? There's nothing in Islam that says, like, you just gotta. Like, I don't think so. I don't think that is. I don't think that's sunnah. I don't know, sure. I think you're looking at Razam. I think you're kind of looking at Islam as like the sunnah too much, like, I don't know, like the Wahhabis, because they think like everything Muhammad did, you just have to do it. Like, I don't even think they think, I don't think even the Wahhabis and the Salafis think you have to do it. I think like they suggest that the closer you are, the better it is, but it's not like mandated, but it's like kind of like nice if you do everything exactly like Muhammad does, but it's not like a command. But let me actually make sure.
Circumstances people have lived in for 99% of human history. Now, if you want to argue that Islam requires enslaving people today, I would say that that is not correct. It depends on the Imam.
So if it depends on the Imam, that means it's allowed. If it depends on the Imam, that means it's allowed. And it always, yeah.
You read.
It depended back then as well. Like if this is nothing new. If Muhammad all of a sudden said like, oh yeah, we're not gonna have slaves here, or if Omar said like, oh no, we're not gonna capture, or Osman or anybody, Abu Bakr like said, like if Abu Bakr was in that, yeah, if you like invaded the place and you could capture slaves, and all of a sudden Omar like, oh, we're not gonna hold any slaves from this battle. I'm pretty sure like people were like, okay, Omar said so, right? So it was always
fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence. This is very clear. There's no requirement that people captured in war are enslaved. This is discussed in classical fiqh books, for example.
Yeah, it's not a requirement. But it's allowed.
Bidayat al-Mujtahid by Ibn Rushd in the 12th century. Go to Kitab al-Jihad, and he summarizes the position of the four Sunni schools of fiqh. The Imam has the option to pardon people and forego taking slaves in war. The Imam.
Yeah, they have the guys again. He's this is a trick. He's like doing like a switcheroo right in front of your eyes. The fact that it says that the Imam has the option to let the slaves go, that means slavery is allowed, with the option of not letting the slaves go. How could you not see, like? And he's talking about like, oh, in modern times, Islamists could be better. In modern times, we have the options of letting the slaves go. So he's saying that even in modern times, slavery is allowed with the additional option of letting them go. How could slavery not be allowed if you have this option? For you to have the option to let the slaves go, that means that even in modern times, we will have slavery according to Islam.
Does not have the option to suspend, for example, hudud punishments for lashing for fornicators, but taking
that you must keep.
Slaves is one of those issues where the Imam can forego if it's in the best interest of the Muslim community. So
only if it's the best interest of the Muslim community, not because it's wrong. And like, okay, at this point, like for example, the Imam could be like, we do be liking some sex slaves like right about now. Like, ooh, we be horny and our wives are getting boring. And ooh, these sex slaves, oof, they look so juicy and yummy. God damn. But the international community is going to look down upon us, and we might get like some sanctions or stuff like that, and we can't do trades with other people. So it's not in the best interest of the ummah right now for us to. We should let these people go. Damn! Oh, look at that one. That one looks good actually right now. But we have to let that booty go. All right. So if it's not in the best interest, like not because it's wrong, but if it's not in the best interest of the ummah, then I guess we have to let them go.
Modern times, a hypothetical Imam could exercise this option and still be.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody's saying, what if the Imam doesn't let the slaves go? So yeah, that means that Daniel is admitting that even by even by today's standards, Islam says like you have. If the Imam says like, oh yeah, we're not letting them go, in this instance, then slavery is okay. So guys, like I think Harris missed this part because a lot of people just listen to this stuff Daniel is saying, just like in a very like not paying attention clearly to what he's saying, and it sounds like to them he's talking against slavery, but everything he's saying is confirming that even today slavery would be allowed. Like, look, if you were not paying attention, how many of you listened to this part of the debate and made assume that Daniel is talking against slavery without paying much attention? Look, like listen to it with that
100% does not have. Go to Kitab al-Jihad, and he summarizes
listen to this right now, but don't pay careful attention. Just listen to it, just like as if you're just doing the dishes and listening to Daniel and Harris doing a debate in the background, and you're thinking about some other stuff as well. It's going to seem like Daniel is denying he's not lying about anything. Everything he says is true about Islam, but it kind of sounds like he's making an anti-slavery point about in Islam, but he's not. But he's actually doing the opposite, right? He's confirming slavery
of human history. Now, if you want to argue that Islam requires enslaving people today, I would say that is not correct. It depends on the Imam. If you read fiqh,
so
Islamic jurisprudence, this is very clear. There's no requirement that people captured in war are enslaved. This is discussed in classical fiqh books. For example, Bidayat al-Mujtahid by Ibn Rushd in the 12th century. Go to Kitab al-Jihad, and he summarizes the position of the four Sunni schools of fiqh. The Imam has the option to pardon people and forego taking slaves in war. The Imam does not have the option to suspend, for example.
See, like for people who are not actually paying attention and just like listening to this like kind of loosely, it kind of seems like Daniel, like he's very clever because he knows how to not say like yes, because he's getting better at this, right? Because he could have said yes, Islam allows slavery, and this would be a shock moment for the audience. People would be like, oh my God, Daniel said Islam allows slavery. But instead of doing that, he said Islam doesn't require slavery and imams could let their slaves go. And that is true. And technically what he said is Islam allows slavery, but he said it in a way that sounded like it was anti-slavery. So that's a very much more clever way of confirming that Islam is against slavery. Islam allows slavery, right? But by making it seem, yeah. So that's a very clever debate tactic. Let's be honest. That is clever.
hudud punishments for lashing for fornicators. But taking slaves is one of those issues where the imam can forego if it's in the best interest of the Muslim community. So in modern times, the hypothetical imam could exercise this option and still be 100% consistent with the most strict understanding of traditional Islamic law. Now, Harris, since you seem to be ignorant about these details about Islamic law, I'll do you a favor and steelman your argument for you. You could respond to me and say, well, Daniel, fine, slavery could be justified in the past, but now with modern technology, modern weapons, clearly slavery could never be justified. That means Islamic rules regarding slavery are not justifiable in our modern context, which means at least one aspect of Islamic law is obsolete. And if one aspect of Islamic law is obsolete due to modern technology, then why not all of Islamic law? This is
no. We're not saying you don't need slavery because of what?
is actually the argument that a lot of Muslim liberal reformists make, but the response to this is simple. In the past, the low level of technology meant that in order to wield political power, war was necessary, which meant that slavery was necessary. The only difference today is there are bombs.
Okay, when you say, given that, okay, slavery was necessary because winning wars requires slaves, this comes with the assumption that fighting those wars were always good and necessary, right? Like if you want to justify slavery because that was what is needed to win a battle, this comes with the assumption that the option was war and always war. I mean, yes, people who did war, they more often chose slaves to help them with those wars, right? But that doesn't mean that everybody always chose war. Like the war themselves, the war itself is not necessarily justified for you to then justify the slavery because it was necessary for the war. In fact, most of the wars were not justified. We do have, even if we don't have examples for, slavery being abolished any time before Muhammad, and I will actually mention something to you about that. We do have many examples of people deciding not to go to war for the sake of peace. Actually, let me be honest about something with you guys, okay? I thought I have a really good example to highlight for you guys that will show that how wrong Daniel is about this, right? And then I looked into it just to make sure that I'm getting it right, and I was wrong about something, right? So he wanted to make a claim that you require slaves to win war, and that's how it's done, and that therefore slavery was necessary. And I knew about, given that I'm Persian, and I keep hearing about how amazing Cyrus the Great was. We are told that Cyrus the Great abolished slavery, and he made slavery illegal, and he was the first person that made in recorded history that we have that made slavery illegal. He was anti-slavery, and this is how many years before Islam? This is around 2000. I mean, around 2000 years before Islam, we have somebody who just made slavery abolished slavery, right? And we were like, oh, and he was a great conqueror. Like he won so many battles. He turned Persia into an empire. The Achaemenid Empire, or the Haqamanishi Empire, is the empire that these nationalist Iranians are proud of the most. Only, the only other one that comes even close would be the Sassanid Empire, right? And Iran, under the Haqamanishi Empire, I think it became the largest it had ever been, right? So Cyrus managed to win so many battles. So we have an example of somebody who won battles while abolishing slavery. But I looked into it, and that's actually not true. So what Cyrus did was he freed slaves, many slaves, including the slaves that were captured, including the Jews that were exiled. I mean, the Jews were not slaves, but he did free a lot of slaves in Babylon and in other places he invaded. But he didn't outlaw slavery. In fact, the Hachemenish Empire, the Achaemenid Empire, as you people call it, had slaves, not as much as maybe some other civil, empires or civilizations, but they still had slaves. So again, I'm just being honest with you guys, because it could have just like, there's so many articles that makes the claim that Cyrus made slavery illegal, and given that he was such a conqueror, it would be such an easy dunk on Daniel to just show, like, look, Daniel, you were wrong. This guy, we have examples of people winning battles and they made slavery illegal, but he didn't. He just freed many slaves while keeping slavery legal, and technically that's what Muhammad did as well. Like, Muhammad did free a whole bunch of slaves, and he didn't make slavery illegal. So it would be kind of comparable. I mean, not to the same extent, but yeah. Max is saying it's all just a story. No, it's not all just a story. Cyrus did free a lot of slaves. Like, Cyrus was not the champion of human rights in a way that a lot of people pretend he is. He did kind of his, the Cyrus Sounder could be seen as the first human rights declaration if you're very loose about what you mean about human rights. The war people under his rule did enjoy a lot more freedom on what to worship and keep their culture, and it was a lot multicultural and than relatively to other kingdoms around him. So that is true, but it's still very inferior compared to the standards that we have, and it does not make a case against Daniel to say you could basically have somebody that completely abolished slavery. Like, freeing slaves is not abolishing slavery. Okay, freeing slaves, many people freed slaves before Muhammad, after Muhammad. That's not abolishing slavery. So we don't have an example of anybody abolishing slavery, for everybody. Like, we do have examples of people abolishing slavery for these people or that people. Like, we have Jewish people saying, like, oh, you can't have Jews for slaves. We have Greek people abolishing slavery. In case of, like, oh, you can't have Greeks for slaves. We have many examples of that. We don't have, like, there's no gotcha at Daniel and finding somebody, any leader before Muhammad abolishing slavery completely to be like, see, Daniel, there were people better that knew better before Muhammad. So no, we don't have that example. Razem saying, yes, of course, but what idiot would compare ancient Persian standards with our modern standards? No, Razem, that's not the point. The point is to show it would be if I pretend that a lot of people could pretend like Cyrus the Great, because this is a very huge misconception out there that Cyrus the Great made slavery completely illegal. And if you just assume that, this would be such an easy dunk on Daniel, because he won battles successfully and he made slavery illegal. So it would be so easy to make Daniel. You need just one example to show that what Daniel is saying is not necessarily true. But yeah, we don't have an example like that.
Nukes, fighter jets, drones, chemical and biological weapons. So now war is not about manpower. Basically, you have to believe that these new technologies.
Guys, you guys are missing the point. The point of comparing Cyrus to Muhammad was not to see. You're missing the point. We're not looking at, this was not a moral comparison. We're not saying, oh, ancient Persian standards compared to our standards. That is not the point. The point that I was trying to make is, was slavery necessary for winning battles, as Daniel is claiming? That's what we are analyzing right now.
Technologies are such a blessing, and we're better off because at the very least, no one needs slavery to defend themselves, right? We live in a world of nukes and drones and weapons of mass destruction, so slavery is no longer needed. So the question is this actually a better world? Well, the harms associated with modern technologies like nukes and drones and mass surveillance, and you can't go to the bathroom without security agencies constantly monitoring your every move and every communication. These harms are far, far greater than the harms that existed in Islamic slavery. Frankly, these modern technologies are more terrifying. We have to look at the whole package. Which is the better world? One with the constant threat of nukes, nuclear annihilation, and constant terrorizing of the world's poor people with trillion-dollar weapons programs? Let's ask the people of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, or the Vietnamese children with horrifying birth defects because of chemical weapons like Agent Orange. Let's ask the Palestinian and Syrian refugees or children who are being burned alive with white phosphorus. In light of these modern technological horrors, the practice of Islamic slavery actually seems a far better alternative in the context of war, even if it were practiced today.
All right, so that is completely wrong. He's saying what would be better. I showed you a study last time. I don't know if I still have it. I was supposed to prepare that before the stream but I did show it to you guys last time. Hold on. Things are better right now. Much better right now. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, I've managed to find it easily using Google. So, let me actually tell you the points he's making, okay, and why they're so absolutely wrong. And tell me if I'm misrepresenting him, okay? So, he's suggesting that, yes, we had slavery, and that was what you needed before to be able to do war. How now we don't have slavery as much. Don't come at me, right? I know there's slavery out there. Now we don't have slavery as much, but we have nukes and drones, and things are a lot worse. And how do we know things are a lot worse? Go ask the Palestinians, go ask those people who are suffering, and these people are suffering. Daniel, this is not how you determine if things are better or worse. I could go also like the children who are suffering because an Islamic army came out and killed their parents, or like a little girl who's being enslaved by the Mongols or the Persians or the Arabs back in that day, and watching her parents being killed in front of her, and now she's being enslaved as a child sex slave. If you ask her, she's probably going to say this is the worst of time. This is the worst of times. Like the world is chaotic. The world is the living hell. The world is a living hell. So you're saying like things are worse right now because if I go and ask like some people who are suffering dramatically from the war-torn countries or countries that are suffering from extreme violence and some other stuff, if I ask them, like, do you really think this is the best way to determine if we're living at a better time or a worse time? Obviously, that's not the best way, right? And I showed you guys this study last time, right? And there are many other studies that show this. However, this is like, or the most recent one. This is 2020. Right? You remember this from last stream? Study settles the score on whether the modern world is less violent. Okay? And it's so clear that the world is, if you go read this, you could go search for this and read this. And every single data point, every single analysis, every single research out there constantly confirms this, that the world is becoming less violent. This is why you don't judge the trend based on what you're seeing on the news. And an interesting thing is that even the world is constantly getting less violent, almost every generation feels like they are living at the worst of time while living at the best of times. Okay? So that's one point. So if he's saying slavery is justified because at least we didn't have modern warfare, at least we didn't have nukes, at least we didn't have drones, at least we didn't have the hell that we have today. Well, what if things are actually better, Daniel? If your argument to justify slavery back then and now, as we saw, was that at least things were better, back then. So now that we know things are better now, does that mean that your prophet was wrong and slavery? Because that's the argument that you have. That's the argument you have for justifying slavery. So if we show that things are actually getting better, does that make slavery bad back then? Like, can you now acknowledge that slavery is wrong? Because that's your argument, and your argument is destroyed, right? However, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that things are a lot worse right now, and see if that was the case, would that justify slavery even back then, right? Imagine like you have a hypothetical situation. Guys, tell me, like, let me know if you are Max. I'm gonna ban you if you distract me with things that have nothing to do with this live stream. If you tag Atheist Republic, because when you tag Atheist Republic, it makes me pay attention, right? When you tag Atheist Republic, it distracts me from what I'm saying, because I want to make sure I read what you guys have to say in the live chat. And then I see that it's something that has nothing to do with the live stream. So you're distracting me from my thought process to something completely irrelevant. If I see it, I'm going to ban you, so I could actually pay attention to more people that are using a tag responsibly. What am I going to say? Yeah, let's, for the sake of argument, let's say that things are actually getting worse. The only way slavery would then be justified in this situation would be if it was slavery that was stopping things from getting worse. Like he's saying that, well, now we have nukes and drones and modern warfare. At least back then, when we had slavery, we didn't have things like this. Well, was it the slavery that was stopping the nukes and the drones and modern warfare? Like, can you not envision a world where we have nukes and drones and slaves at the same time? Like, would that be impossible to imagine? So this is not like, oh, slavery was good because when we had slavery, we didn't have nukes. Well, what do you mean? Like, even though we didn't have nukes and drones, slavery by itself is an evil. Imagine if you're writing, does it make sense what I'm saying, guys? Like, imagine if you had like let's think of an imaginary world, like think you're writing like science fiction, okay? And you had, an evil army that enslaved, like every town that it captured, it enslaves people and then forced them to participate in war and kill other people, and it was just such a bloodbath. But all of a sudden, as this dystopian world keeps progressing, this evil empire manages to find a technology that makes them killer robots. Now they have killer robots, so they're not enslaving people to go to fight their wars for them, because they have killer robots. And now they're 10 times more brutal because the killer robots are just so effective at killing things, right? And it's actually, things are now a lot worse. Would this mean that, oh, I wish they bring slavery back, because when they had slavery, we didn't have these killer robots? Like, oh, it was a good thing that they had slavery. It was a good thing that they were killing people with their hands and swords, because that we didn't have killer robots. Like, what? Or like, it's just because something is not there anymore and things are worse, it doesn't mean that thing that's not there was a good thing. Imagine, for example, your dad is beating the crap out of you every single day, okay? And then he dies in a car accident, and now he can't provide for his family, and now you're homeless and living in the street. And your situation is much worse. You're living in the street, you're starving, you don't have anywhere to go sleep, you're ill, you don't have money for the doctor, you don't have any, and your situation is a lot worse, okay, than when he was beating you up every day. Does that make you're like, things were better when my dad was beating me up? Okay, so does that mean it was a good thing that he was beating you up every day just because things are worse now? No, because he could have just not beaten you up. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, just because the absence of something bad is now correlated with things getting worse, it doesn't mean that bad thing was good. This is so simple. I don't know how to explain this anymore better. Does that make sense to you guys? These are simple stuff. So don't let Daniel trick you with this, like, oh, things were better back then. So first of all, things were not better back then. And even if they were, that doesn't make those things okay. Thirdly, a lot of the slavery stuff involved things that didn't necessarily participate in, like, stopping winning battles or stopping the goddamn nukes and drones. Like, imagine if you are a sex slave. I know some of you like that, but ignore that. Okay? Imagine that you don't like that. Imagine if you are a sex slave and this is horrible, the horrible situation. Imagine if Prophet Muhammad has just killed you, your father and your brother and your husband, okay? And you hate his guts, and he's about to have sex with you against your will, okay? And you're like, this is hell. This is the worst of times. This is horrible. And you tell him, and you're like, you're an evil man, and you're about to do even more evil than you just did. And Prophet Muhammad just, like, leans over, is like, you don't understand. I have to have sex with you right now. Because if I don't, there will be nukes. I know you don't understand what nukes are, but I'm going to rape you right now because nukes and drones. Like, what? Doesn't make sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense to her, obviously, because she's going to be like, what the hell is nuke? But it doesn't make sense to us either. Like, it's not stop. Like, you can't be like, I'm going to cause more violence and harm because at least this is not a better world compared to what? Compared to the future generations where they're not going to have slavery and sex violence, but they have worse things. That doesn't justify what you're doing. Oh shit! Yeah, you're right. Wait, what happened? Is the mod is? I think the mod is muted. Oh yeah, that's not me.
Right. No, slavery wasn't abolished because of the modern day warfare. Slavery was the reason that we don't have slavery is because the Enlightenment forced us to realize that owning other human beings is not a good idea now.
So Harris is saying slavery wasn't abolished because of modern day warfare. That's true. It is also true the other way around, though. It wasn't. We don't have modern warfare because slavery stopped.
Now, that is just the outcome of that.
But it doesn't even matter. I mean, this is also hypothetical, right? It doesn't even matter because the whole point is, like, things are worse now, so slavery was okay. That doesn't follow. But even if it did, things are better now.
Anyway, I always used to wonder how
everything Daniel says about defending Islam and fighting against modernity, just all of his arguments fall apart once you recognize that things are better right now. Okay? Like, his entire philosophy of being anti-modernity and anti-modernity and pro-Islam rests on this whole premise that things are way, way worse now. And every single piece of information shows that that's not true. And that's going to be, and for him to try to argue otherwise, he has to keep finding example of things that are bad, which things are bad, but they are better. Like, he's going to be like, oh, things are better now. What about this? What about that? What? Oh, look at homeless people here. Oh, look at, like, people who are dying under torture over there. Look at warfare over here. Like, yeah, things being better, that doesn't mean that everything is resolved. That doesn't mean the world is like this utopia and we're living under this utopian heaven-like situation where every problem under the sun has been solved. Things are still really bad, but they're the best they have ever been. How do people not recognize that finding examples of horrible situations doesn't mean that the world is the worst it has ever been. This is such basic logic.
Could people believe in war and a certain idea and are always propagating it, but when it comes to doing it themselves, they don't do it? Whether that's George W. Bush or Trump or our very...
Okay, I don't like this point that Harris is making. Harris is now going to go and attack, like, you don't believe this because you're not doing it yourself, kind of. Like, guys, if you, again, I most of this time, I think Harris did a good job by bringing attention to, Sharia and stuff like that. But I don't think you should make this debate about Daniel bad. I think you should make the debate about Sharia bad.
Very own comes out for us to realize that owning other human beings is not a good idea. Now that is just the outcome of that. Anyway, I always used to wonder, how could people believe in war and a certain idea and are always propagating it, but when it comes to doing it themselves, they don't do it? Whether that's George W. Bush or Trump or our very own Haqiqatjou. These guys are okay to propagate wars and revolutions, but when it comes to taking action, they run away. Trump.
Okay, he's taking action though. He's taking action. He's making, his videos are reaching thousands of people. Like, I don't understand this argument against Muslims who don't go doing jihad. I mean, I don't know why Daniel actually doesn't defend himself in this way. If I was Daniel, I was like, what I'm doing is jihad. Like, this is jihad. This is actually a very effective form of doing jihad. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm doing, part of, even if you think like jihad only means warfare, part of warfare is media warfare. Like, part of warfare is hearts and minds warfare, like, ideological battle. That is part of warfare. So I am doing jihad, and I'm doing it actually more effectively than a soldier would do on the battlefield. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you think like how, like that? If Daniel was clever here, he would like, this is what I would say if I was Daniel. Okay, I would be like, you call me a barbarian. How barbaric must you be to think that winning battles only involves violence? How dare you call me and my ideology barbaric? Where that's the only way you could think about when it comes to winning battles and winning, like, overcoming your enemy. The only thing you could think of when it comes to jihad and warfare would be violence. That shows your barbaric mindset, Harris, because I am doing jihad and I'm doing and it's been, and you have to be like, alhamdulillah, it's been very successful so far, if God allows, or something like some stupid stuff like that.
Made health excuses, and so did George W. Bush, but our friend Haqiqatjou also makes similar excuses to get out of it. Why does he not go to Afghanistan or Syria to fight for ISIS or Taliban? If you say, well, they're not truly Islamic, then go there. It's definitely much closer to Muhammad or your true Islam than America is. But no.
But why would he go there? Wouldn't it be, if he cares about Islam, wouldn't you be in a place where it's less Islamic so you could fight for Islam? Like, again, Daniel doesn't make this defense. If I was Daniel, I would be like, oh, you're saying those places. First of all, Daniel doesn't care much about ISIS, but for Taliban, he's on a wait and see kind of attitude. Like, he doesn't completely endorse them, but he does defend them, but not ISIS, right? So, but let's not say ISIS. Let's say Taliban, for example. Let's say Taliban, he thinks like, this is great. This is an improvement for Afghanistan. It's definitely more Islamic. So that's great, even if they make mistakes. This is an improvement for Afghanistan. So good job, Afghanistan, for becoming more Islamic, right? And you're like, okay, then why didn't you move there? If I was Daniel, I would be like, I'd rather be in a less Islamic place because that's where I'm needed more. Why would I go to the place where Islam is winning, where I'm needed in a place where Islam is not? That's what I haven't seen Daniel make that argument, but that would be the argument I would make if I was on Daniel's position.
I'm keen to see what excuses you make this time. Haqiqatjou likes to present himself as not like any other apologist. He says it as it is. He doesn't hold back. If Islam condones violence, he says, yeah, so what? It is what it is. But when it comes to fighting the holy war or application of Sharia, he doesn't actually do anything. At least those jihadis who went to Syria.
Wait, what are you talking about? When it comes to Sharia, he doesn't do anything. He's trying to create a base for it in places where it's the least Sharia-like. He is doing. is he talking about? Huh?
He says, yeah, so what? It is what it is. But when it comes to fighting the holy war or application of Sharia, he doesn't actually do anything. At least,
yeah, when it comes to the application of Sharia, he doesn't do anything. He's fighting the ideological battle for it.
Those jihadis who went to Syria to fight for ISIS were honest.
Guys, I think honestly, if I was a Muslim, if I had Daniel's ideology, not just any Muslim, but kind of like Daniel kind of type of Muslim, I think I would make the best dawah channel out there. Like I would be the best defender of Islamic ideology if I was on their team.
Osama bin Laden, who gave up his life of luxury, was honest. They were literalist and honest.
But I wouldn't be able to say that like if I was on their side, because I would have to give credit. This is the only reason why I'm an ex-Muslim. Because if I was fighting on the Muslim side, I wouldn't be able to tell you how awesome I am at my job, because I would have to give credit to Allah. Okay? The reason why I joined the ex-Muslim side is because whenever I see that I'm doing good, I could actually congratulate myself and tell you guys how awesome I am. I couldn't do streaming without that, so that's why I switched from Islam to ex-Muslim.
Haqiqatjou.
Oh, Susanna is saying you should debate Harris as a Muslim. Yes, I should. That's a good. I think I would defeat him.
Is only a literalist and honest as long as he is sitting in his nice suburban home in America watching Muslim apologists debate on 70.
You are ex-Muslim because you don't like to pray in the morning. No, because as an ex-Muslim, I often wake up like 5 or 4 a.m. and ran in the morning, so it's not that.
Inch TVs. And so is the case with all these trolls whose following Haqiqatjou enjoys. They stay at home, probably enjoy welfare payments, but buy nice cars and enjoy shisha at night. Wallah, life is good. Everything's sorted. But let's curse the West.
Wait, what are you talking about? First of all, wait, why is it? This has nothing to do with Sharia, Harris. Hold on.
Apologists debate on 70-inch TVs. And so is the case with Haqiqatjou is only a literalist and honest as long as he is sitting in his nice suburban home in America watching Muslim apologists debate on 70-inch.
Okay, there's nothing anti-Islamic about having a nice home and watching Islamic debates on a big screen TV. Why would you watch it on a big screen TV? I don't know. This doesn't make any sense. Like this is not an anti-Islamic thing for Daniel to do. Like Islam is not against comfort. Islam is not against comfy beds. In fact, you don't have to be in a Western country to have comfy beds. I mean, I lived in Iran half of my life, and my bed was plenty comfy.
TVs. And so is the case with
our TV was also big in Iran as well. So I don't know what you're talking about.
All these trolls whose following Haqiqatjou enjoys. They stay at home, probably enjoy welfare payments, but buy nice cars and enjoy shisha at night. Wallah.
Yeah, they have shishas in Islamic countries as well. They have nice cars there as well. And none of this is anti-Islamic. Like
life is good. Everything's sorted. But let's curse the West.
I mean, it's not. I don't understand are these like comfy beds and big screen TVs and shishas are they like a Western thing? I don't understand what Harris's point is here. Can somebody? Maybe I'm missing it. Am I missing Harris's point here? I don't know what is. I don't understand how this is like an own on Daniel. Like you're comfortable, so you are not Islamic. I mean, is Islam against comfort? What is the point here? Somebody tell me. Like, am I misrepresenting? Am I misrepresenting Harris, or I'm just not getting his point?
Look what Prophet Muhammad said about people like Haqiqatjou. Not equal among the believers who sit and the mujahideen who fight for Allah.
Yeah, but he is fighting for Allah. That's not an anti-comfort verse there.
Look what the Quran says. Fighting is enjoined upon you, while it is hard.
Yeah, like I understand. I am from India and I have these luxuries. Like this is not a Western thing. I don't know what you're. Somebody tell me if I'm misrepresenting Harris. Somebody in the live chat, because I don't want to be misrepresenting him, because I don't get his point here.
It could.
Okay, so here, somebody's saying he is comfortable in a Western country when he claims that a Sharia law country is better. Yeah, but those two things don't contradict each other. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't claim that the Sharia law country will not have. He doesn't cla comfort, and also he's in a Western country fighting for Sharia in a Western country, which is what you would do if you care about Sharia and you think that Sharia should be promoted everywhere, including in non-Islamic countries. And there's no reason for him to do that and be uncomfortable. Like, why would he do? Like, why would he be like, okay, I'm gonna sleep on the floor instead of my comfy bed, and I'm gonna like get a TV that is not as good to be able to watch debates? Like, why? In fact, you would argue that if I'm comfortable, I would be able to fight more effectively, be at a better mindset, to do my research, to be able to do debates on a more clear mind, get proper sleep. I don't understand. Like, this is none of comfort is not against Islam. Yeah, I'm not getting Harris's point here.
Be that you dislike something when it is good for you. Quran chapter 2 verse 216. This is directly for you, Haqiqatjou. I remember Apostle Prophet asked
yeah, Harris is interpreting sitting literally, but you say sitting means being silent. No, because he said like Harris is saying you're sitting at your homes instead of fighting for Allah. But what Daniel is doing is fighting for Allah.
you the same question, Haqiqatjou. You simply said, well, I have my family.
And what has this got to do? Like, what this debate is about Sharia versus human rights, and Harris is debating why Daniel is not going out and fighting in Afghanistan. Like, what has this got to do with the topic of the debate?
Family here. How bloody convenient. So are you saying that those people who used to go to jihad would take their families with them? This is what Prophet Muhammad said about the family. The Prophet.
So he's saying Daniel's excuse for not going and fight in Afghanistan is because of I have my family here in the US, right? But again, if that is Daniel's excuse, that's a lame like, I gave you the better excuse. Why would I go fight there where I'm already doing a better fight over here?
Prophet said, none of you will have faith till he loves me more than his father.
You have to be like, Alhamdulillah, God has given me the resources and the know-how and the tools to be able to fight this fight effectively, and I'm going to take advantage of it fully. So why would I deny this path that Allah has put in front of me and made me capable of? Like, yeah, like I'm not. Daniel could say like the soldier that is fighting in Afghanistan for Islam. I'm not going to say that they are not, obviously with the resources that they have and the skills that they have, they're fighting their fight, and the resources that God has given them, they're fighting their fight. And with the resources that God has given me, with the citizenship in the US and access to internet and this life that I have, and the education that I have, and the access to the information that I have, and the luxury of the time that I have that I could spend on researching these things, with the tools that Allah has given me, I am fighting another fight. Every Muslim has to fight for Sharia with the resources that they have available to them, and that's what I'm doing. But again, Daniel would be defending himself in this position, but that would be a distraction because he was supposed to defend Sharia. Armin is saying, but didn't Daniel said that he would prefer to live in a Sharia government country? Yeah, but that wouldn't contradict that either, because what he prefers and what would be the most effective thing to do might be two different things. AJ is saying, Harris and Daniel have been arguing on Twitter about why he doesn't move to a country with Sharia if it's so great. I think AP started it. Yeah, but that's not the topic of this debate. And again, if I was Daniel, I think I would be able to defend this better than he is defending it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he defended it better on Twitter. Maybe Daniel is just being clever here and is going to be like, I'm not going to get into this discussion because the topic of the debate is not why I'm here in the United States.
His children and all mankind, Bukhari 15. So Haqiqatjou, you want to get into answering question, answer this question. Do you love your parents and your family more than you love the Prophet? So you got to pick up your love for, you got to give up your love for nice comfy beds, big TVs, halal cheeseburgers.
Why should you give up halal cheeseburgers and comfy beds where in Islam tells you that you have to give up comfy beds?
Kebabs maybe, and get off your backside and go set an example. Fight for what you believe in. You had the perfect opportunity.
He is fighting for what he believes in more than most Muslims.
to go to Syria or Afghanistan to fight for your cause, but you chose to sit in your nice house in America, whose economy runs on interest, and according to you guys, spilling the blood of innocent Muslims in Afghanistan.
And he's taking that money from that economy. YouTube is literally paying him to fight the imperialism of the West and all his ills in his view. Like, yeah, I am using that. I'm taking the money of and using it against its ideal. So I guess I win.
Afghanistan and Iraq, being allies of Israel, like Jews. You are basically living and enjoying the perks of a country that is literally the enemy of Muslims like Afghanistan. It cannot be clearer than this. It's like Muslims are fighting the kuffars of Quraysh, and here you are saying, nah, I'm just going to sit in my house in Mecca. You are willing to run the risk of raising your children in this evil society that is more than likely going to corrupt your children. They might fall into the trap of the Western lifestyle, like going out, partying, drinking.
Yeah, he could say, yeah, I'm risking all of that because to me, the Ummah and spreading Sharia is worth that cost. There you go. Easy answer.
Having premarital sex, all the horrible things that you worry about. I actually know some.
And I'm going to try to be as careful as I can for my children not to be corrupted. But I acknowledge that the risk of their corruption is higher here in the United States. Even if I'm very careful and I try to raise them in a bubble, it's still going to be very hard. And yes, they're going to be exposed to that risk. But what I'm doing here is worth the cost.
Some modest Muslim families who leave Western countries just when their children are about to hit the.
Lee came saying, go discuss this with Harris face to face. It's easy to criticize Harris out of the context when he can't defend himself. Go talk to him. Oh, really? Look at the bias here. You didn't say that when I was criticizing Daniel. First of all, I do talk to Harris. I recently talked to the other criticism I had with of Harris. We had this discussion with him on another stream. Remind me, Susanna, help me with, I forgot the name of the Pakistani guy, the ex-Christian Pakistani guy. Sorry, I'm really bad with names. I went on that stream and I discussed it, and I will discuss it more. And Harris is also welcome to either invite me on his channel or come here and talk about these things on my channel. But you are basically, what you're saying here right now would make any debate review impossible. You're here watching a debate review and you're telling me like, oh, I shouldn't critique him. I should talk to him directly. So how could I review any debates if I can't criticize Harris without him being here? Like, do I have to only review debates only when they're present? And how come you didn't say that when I was criticizing Daniel? Guys, correct me if I'm wrong. When I what is it? I don't know what your name is. Lee Kim. Did Lee Kim say anything when I was criticizing Daniel? Did he say don't criticize, like, why are you criticizing Daniel without Daniel being here to defend himself? Or did you only say that when I was criticizing Harris? Are you being like tribal? Are you being like, oh, don't criticize the guy I like without him being defended because you're being tribal? I think I'm right. Yeah, you guys are saying. Oh wow. Oh, okay. So I have to be fair with Harris, but it's reasonable for me to be unfair to Daniel. You're thinking fairness means that I don't get to criticize anybody unless they're present here. So your standard for fairness is that unless somebody is here present to defend themselves, I don't get to criticize them. But it's okay to be unfair to Daniel because he's a POS. He's a POS, so that I get to be, I'm sorry, I'm not like you. I'm not tribal. If I want to be fair, if I want to apply fairness, I would have to apply fairness to everybody, regardless of how they are. Like, I have to treat everybody like with the same standard, regardless of how they are. Look at this. You're so okay. These are like, look, this is what aboutism. You guys suck at logic. You're saying, do you think Daniel and Farid or any of them are fair with you? No, they are not. Who gives a crap? This is such a classic logical fallacy, guys. You need to be better at this. You're doing? What aboutism? Oh, I can be unfair because they would be unfair. That is so fallacious. You guys, these are simple logical fallacies. Go learn them. Oh yes, I did at Ghalib. Ghalib, it was Ghalib's channel. Harris showed up there. Again, if we ever find any time for me, and not just Harris, if Daniel ever wants to talk to me on his channel, on my channel, I would be free to do that. If Harris wants to talk to me on my channel, on his channel, anytime, well, not anytime, I would have to set up a time, but I will make it happen. Any of them, I will make it happen. But again, you cannot be like, oh, do not. You're here for a debate review, and you're telling me like, oh, don't criticize Harris unless unless Harris is here to defend himself. So that would make any debate review impossible. Then why are you even here for me to review this debate? Like, what a ridiculous standard.
Ages of 10 or 11, they go back citing their fears just mentioned, like they used to show in the cartoons. You know, when you look at yourself in the mirror, don't you see a jackass? You know, like that's.
Come on, like, oh wow, like look at this attack on personal attack.
10 or 11, they go back citing their fears just mentioned, like they used to show in the cartoons. You know, when you look at yourself in the mirror, don't you see a jackass? You know, like
what? This is no.
That's how I feel. You must feel like that at some point.
You must feel that. No, he doesn't. I don't think he does. I don't think he feels like he's a jackass. I think he thinks he's doing God's work, and that's actually the problem. That is the problem. The problem is that religion makes you feel like you're doing something good when you're not.
We have got another 5-minute response coming in from Daniel. Thanks so much. The floor is all yours.
Okay, Harris is completely misrepresenting Islamic law. In Islamic law and the Sharia, there's no obligation at all times to fight jihad, and there's no obligation at all times to take slaves or sex slaves. This is a complete misrepresentation. Harris needs to study Islamic.
Yeah, the accusation, Daniel, of Islam is not that there's an obligation to take slaves. The accusation of on Islam is that it allows taking slaves, not that there's an obligation to take slaves.
Law and fiqh, because he's clearly ignorant. He has this kind of, George Bush understanding of Islam, or Donald Trump understanding of Islam, where it's.
Well, okay, Daniel, Harris Sultan's understanding of Islam is more than the vast majority of Muslims. You cannot deny that. That is fact. What Harris understands of Islam, even if you think he's not as good as you, it is far superior than 99.9% of Muslims out there. So if you want to have this as an attack on Harris, you're like dissing on the vast majority of Muslims.
It's just about killing and murdering. This is like from intelligence agencies, basically. You think ISIS is Islam. Nowhere have I endorsed ISIS or said that, yeah, they're the true representation.
Oh, be careful, Daniel. You're almost saying that I am Islam. Look, I know he didn't mean that, but that it comes across like that. He says like, Harris says that ISIS is Islam, but nowhere did I say that I endorse Islam. Daniel, this is getting heretical a little bit. Did you just make the claim that you are Islam? I'm not saying he did, but it just comes across like that. Hold on.
You think ISIS is Islam. Nowhere have I endorsed ISIS or said that, yeah, they're the true.
Wow. So anything Daniel says is Islam is Islam.
Representation of Islam. You are simply misrepresenting. And so it's a complete straw man. All you're doing is straw man arguments. And you can't even respond to any of the points that I made. I responded to your point about slavery, and now I'm going to respond to the point of sex slavery. But I just want to make.
Susanna is like, bitch, I am Islam. Like, you think you know Islam? I am Islam.
One other point. What
if Daniel is watching this? Is probably this is how he's watching. Okay, this is what Daniel would do. This is not an attack on Daniel. This is kind of, this he's probably doing like astaghfirullah. Like this, he would be watching this. Daniel, tell me, please message me and tell me if I got this right. If you were watching this, I don't know if you are. You're probably not. But if you were watching this, were you like watching this like this? And then when I said, like, Daniel is saying that he is Islam, did you just murmur, like, just like subtly just say astaghfirullah under your breath when I said that while going like this to your beard? That's I think that's what you did.
Why don't you, Harris? You want me to get off my backside and go to Afghanistan while that country is being bombed and being threatened by the United States and just getting out of a 20-year brutal occupation with.
Wait. Okay, this is something that if I think Harris should have done immediately. Well, I mean, he can't interrupt. So, but as soon as he had an opening, he should have responded to this immediately. Listen to what Daniel's saying here. Okay?
Me to get off my backside and go to Afghanistan while that country is being bombed and being threatened by the United States. And
okay, first of all, this excuse by Daniel doesn't make sense. Okay, putting yourself in harm's way should not be the excuse you have for why you're not fighting that fight. Being more effective here should be the excuse.
Just getting out of a 20-year
brutal. Again, guys, I would be the best Dawa guy. I would probably be. I such a missed opportunity of my talents. You know, I would have been the most effective Dawa channel.
Occupation with thousands of deaths and rapes. Why don't you tell your followers, Haris, all these followers that you have in Pakistan and India, all these Mortads like you, tell them to move to Botswana.
Botswana again. Guys, we already addressed the Botswana situation. Botswana is not this like utopia. Just because they have better human rights, it doesn't mean everything is going to be great there. You know, there are many different factors that we care about, not just human rights. And human rights doesn't make everything all of a sudden better. We already addressed this.
Why don't you tell them to move to Botswana? Tell them to move to Haiti, because Botswana and Haiti, they have LGBT rights, they have women's rights. Why are they in Muslim countries?
Yeah, LGBT rights, that doesn't mean that everything else is good. We're not just going to move to somewhere like, this place must be a heaven because they have LGBT rights. Obviously, that's not the only factor we care about, Daniel.
You should tell them to move to Botswana and Haiti. And in fact, it would be a more favorable position than Muslims moving to Afghanistan, because if your followers move to Botswana, Pakistan wouldn't bomb Botswana. Pakistan wouldn't try to agitate in Botswana and try to get them to adopt Sharia or Islamic law. They would be able to live their free lives with human rights and LGBT rights and women's rights. Why don't you do that, Haris? Is it because
well, I mean, we already live in a place where LGBT rights is respected, and nobody, you know. Wait, I don't know what you're saying. Oh, I get it. Daniel's saying if we move there, our bodies will be protection against the bombing of. I mean, I don't understand what. Actually, I don't know. Is that what he's saying? I don't understand what Daniel's point here is.
Because you're a con man? Is it because you're dishonest? You're not telling your followers in none of your videos, hey guys, human rights are great. Move from a Muslim country like Pakistan or Bangladesh and go to Botswana and Haiti. You never say that. So you're a hypocrite.
Well, I mean, if you are a member of LGBT and there's nowhere else to go to but Botswana, and you're being discriminated against because of LGBT issues, then yeah, I guess I will say that. Go move to Botswana. I mean, if you can find somewhere better where it has more economic opportunities, then move with LGBT rights, preferably go there. But if none of those is an option and you are very into saving yourself from anti-LGBT discrimination, then I guess maybe, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if there's like how much, I don't know what the conditions are like there in Botswana, but if it is an improvement, then yeah, move there. If it's an improvement.
You are a con man. Now, let me get to the point about sex slavery. A good book I recommend is Lawrence Keeley's War Before Civilization.
Wait, did I miss a part? I thought Daniel said something. I might have missed it. Hold on.
He explains that pre-modern war was primarily about manpower. The side that had the largest army was usually going to win. And if you had too few people, this made you an easy target for a larger group to attack you and wipe you out. This meant that women were very valuable in pre-modern societies because your society's ability to reproduce and build up the population is limited by the number of fertile wombs you have. Keeley says, and I quote, although the loss of even a large percentage of males will have no direct influence on a group's demographic fortunes, the loss of or gain of fertile women can mean the difference between population decline and growth. This is why Keeley argues all pre-modern civilization.
Okay, so if access to fertile women means that you will survive, then, and that will justify anything to do for the sake of fertility. I mean, then just, and therefore that would just, why not just make factories of baby making machines of women? Like, why don't you just put women against their will on assembly lines in a factory and just have men that their job is to just come impregnate them against their will? And these, like, why just not do that? Just go full on all the way. I mean, you know, because you are bringing those rationale for like for fertility to the modern day. Why not just use the modern technology and just match it up? Like, you make it seem like fertility is such an important thing that everything that we do for the sake of higher fertility rates will be justified. Like, that line of reasoning you could do a lot worse than even slavery if that's your reasoning. And again, he keeps talking about, given the realities of the ground on the of economic conditions and the structure of society, he says it was justifiable for them to do these things, but I wouldn't use the word justifiable. I would say understandable and explain. I would use the word explainable. It's explainable for why they did what they did. But given that we are better now, given that we have better standards, I wouldn't use the word justifiable. I would use the word explainable, because we are judging them based on our modern moral standards. And we understand that this is a different moral standard than what they were going by. But again, you keep saying back then, back then, back then. Well, Daniel, again, keep it to back then. That's what we're saying. Yes, back then, this was acceptable, right? So what we're trying to do as people who are on the side of progress, we're trying to make sure that the standards and the moral values of back then is not creeping to today, because we can do better now. And that's why we're against your religion, because you're like, whoa, Muhammad was living under this condition, and back then they did this, and was okay, and this was acceptable. Yeah, and we're trying to build a wall between whatever was acceptable back then and make sure that we don't do that anymore. We want to move past that. And your religion makes that hard. All religions make that hard. And also this whole notion of fertility rates being so important, to have more babies. Yeah, maybe back then it was important, but right now that's not an issue for the entire planet. It really depends on the country. So I don't know, this obsession with fertility rate, it really depends. It's not. It comes with this assumption that more babies always means a good thing. That's conditional. In some places we're dealing with overpopulation. In some places we're dealing with underpopulation. And so this solution to this thinking that having more babies is always a solution, that shows that if you are claiming that Islam is just in favor of more babies at all times, that shows that Islam is not an answer, because we need different answers for different places. In some places we need, in some places we're going to need more babies. Well, no, not more babies. We need a higher population. In some places we need less. So that means that we need to come up with different solutions for the different places. So this is overall solution for the entire world shows how inadequate that is as a tool for us to use in a surgical way to come up with different solutions for different places. Yeah, again, Dave is saying, so this guy takes human rights and creates a straw man fallacy out of it to then criticize it to justify the atrocities of fundamentalism and come to the conclusion that Islam is better. Yes, because he keeps all the problems that he's addressing, that some of them are true, none of it is because of human rights. Human rights is not the reason why those problems exist. He has never shown why human rights is the reason why those problems exist. He's never been shown why is the causation. And then he identifies some problems. Some of the problems he identifies are actual real problems that needs to be solved. Some problems that he identifies are actually not real problems. It's actually the opposite, right? So, for example, when he's talking about people feeling more lonely, families falling apart, that is a correct problem that is becoming more, that needs to be addressed. When he's talking about the world becoming more violent, that is not a problem. That is actually the other way around. We still do have violence that needs to be reduced, but the problem is not that we're having more violence. We actually have less violence. That's a good thing. But the problems that he identifies correctly as real problems that we need to solve, he does two things about it that is completely unjustified. One is that he blames human rights for it, where human rights is not responsible for it. And then the second most outrageous thing he does is that he then claims that Islam is a solution, and Islam is actually not a solution. Islam makes things worse. Like, how you're talking about the breaking up of families, and you think Islam is a solution, where through slavery, Islam broke apart families. You know, you're constantly highlighting how Islam supports family. Yeah, Islam supports the family of Muslims, and you're by breaking up other people's families. When you have sex slaves, when you kill husbands and brothers and take their daughters and wives as slaves, and you're saying that is necessary to win battles. So you're saying the condition for the Muslim families to have good families is by breaking apart other people's families. So don't pretend that you're pro-family, where that's how you maintain your family structure, by destroying other people's families. You are anti-family. You're pro-Muslim families by breaking apart non-Muslim families.
Took sex slaves. Again, this was a necessary aspect of war. If you did not take concubines, you were at a major disadvantage militarily, because you either take concubines or your people get wiped off the face of the earth. There is no third option. So
yeah, so my people, I will have to destroy other people to keep my. This is the nature of tribalism. Like, oh, the only way to keep my tribe alive is by destroying other tribes and taking them as slaves. Like, this is your mind when you're not thinking about the betterment of a humanity as a whole, and you're thinking about, you know, I'm a Muslim, I care about my tribe, which is the Ummah, which is the Muslim community. Like, we, on the side of human rights, we're thinking about all human rights. This is why our values are superior to yours, Daniel, because when we are defending humans, that includes Muslims. When you're saying this is good because we win, because our people win if we take slaves, you're talking about Muslims winning. And you're not talking, you admit that you're not talking about ex-Muslims or atheists. You want them to be defeated. You want them to be crushed. You want them to be taken as slaves. You want them to be executed for being ex-Muslims, right? When we talk about human rights, we're not talking about atheist rights. We're not talking about ex-Muslims' rights. We're talking about everyone's rights. We're talking about everyone's happiness. We're talking about including Muslims' happiness and their rights.
So given that stark reality, yes, taking sex slaves was not only morally justified, it was morally necessary. And really, that's enough for the argument, but it's worth noting that the Sharia's rules on concubines and slaves in general are the most humane out of any other civilization. Again, slavery is not supposed to be a fun time, but Islam explicitly gives slaves many rights. They can't be mutilated.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure when slavery was not supposed to be a fun time. I think the people who are taking the slaves and having sex with them against their will, I think they weren't thinking like, oh my God, this is such a horrible time. I'm doing this for the Ummah. I'm doing this. Oh, this is so horrible. This is a violation of this woman's rights. Oh my God, look at how much she's suffering. I had to kill her husband. I had to kill her sons. I had to kill her father. Oh, I was being tortured inside when I was doing this. And now I don't know how I'm able to maintain this erection given how bad of a time I'm having about this absolute necessity of this thing that I'm doing, because for the sake of I'm doing this for the Ummah. I don't want to be doing this. This is not fun at all. None of this is enjoyable. This is the worst time. I can't bear this. I have 4 more sex slaves right back there. And after this, I have to do this 4 more. Oh my God, I can't take this. But I have to do it for Allah, for the sake of winning these battles, for the sake of creating more Muslim babies. I will do this. I will think about my wife so I could maintain this erection. That's the only way, because obviously this is horrible.
They can't be killed. They can't be prostituted. For women, if she gives birth to her master's baby, the baby is free, and she also is freed automatically when her master dies.
Oh yes, music guy. I'm not promoting slavery. YouTube, dear YouTube gods, let's all pray. Dear YouTube guys, I want to bring to your attention that I was not endorsing sex without consent. I was making fun of people who are endorsing that. That's not my view. I was criticizing it. I'm also anti-slavery. Is there anything about slavery in YouTube's communities? Let's assume it is. I also don't endorse slavery. Obviously not. I was criticizing this person right here that was doing so. So please, guys, the algorithm can't hear what I'm saying. The reason why I'm doing this is because in case there's a strike, when we're appealing the strike, I could then, highlight this moment that I was saying that to a human person that was eventually review it, that this was an unjust strike, right? Yes, Susanna is saying, everyone please sacrifice a like to the altar of the YouTube gods so that they may be pleased. Please, right now, like the video, because I've been saying a lot of naughty words, and that will suppress the video. So your likes will help undo that.
These rules ensured that captured slaves very quickly integrated within larger Islamic society, especially after 1 or 2 generations.
Oh, look at this guy, this person. He said, I dislike the video. You know, that actually helps us, right? You know, that actually helps the video. Oh, wow. You know, the engagement that with your dislike is actually helping. Thank you. You know, your comment, you're actually helping us. You think you think this is like such a own. Your comment, I dislike the video, that engagement is actually helping us. So thank you for helping the video. Oh, you know. Okay, great. So thank you then. Your yes also, this yes also is helping us as well.
This with other societies in history that maintain a permanent subjugated slave class based on race or ethnicity. Islamic slavery is not like that. And that's why we see, for example, the Mamluks in the Middle Ages, who were a ruling class of Muslim slaves and the descendants of slaves, some of whom even reached the level of sultans and emirs in the Muslim caliphate.
Hey, you also had slaves that you chopped their dicks off. So don't pretend like you go look at these anecdotes. He goes and finds the example of the slaves who actually became rulers later, right? That's true. The Mamluks were like that, and they actually took over after. But you also had plenty of slaves that you just chopped their dicks off just because.
As slaves. So the argument is very simple, Harris, but you haven't responded to anything that I've said. All you're doing is...
By the way, by you, I didn't mean that. Sorry, Daniel, I didn't accuse you of having slaves. I shouldn't have spoken so collectively about Muslims as if they're all the same. That was my wrong.
Gish galloping, bringing in everything except the kitchen sink, misrepresenting straw man. And I think the audience sees that. I have a very simple argument. Sharia preserves marriage and family and community and the human race overall. And I'm bringing statistics.
Sharia destroys families and by destroying other people's families, right? Again, Sharia maybe holds together Muslim families by destroying non-Muslim families. Again, not Muslims, Sharia. I'm not accusing Muslims of doing this.
The argument is very simple, Harris, but you haven't responded to anything that I've said. All you're doing is gish galloping, bringing in everything except the kitchen sink, misrepresenting straw man. And I think the audience sees that. I have a very simple argument. Sharia preserves marriage and family and community and the human race overall. And I'm bringing statistics, objective statistics, that if you think that family and marriage is not valuable.
Your statistics were either not true, as we saw in the previous streams, or they didn't say what you wanted them to say, Daniel. Also, you keep saying human rights is Sharia preserves family. We saw actually the defense of family in human rights declarations was much more clear and explicit than in Islam, right? Like there's no clear indication that Islam defends, like there's no clear line like, oh, we're pro-family. Like there's nothing like that in Sharia. He has to interpret things. Again, I'm not saying Islam is not pro-family. It is a certain structure of family and society, but if you want to go by the text, human rights declarations are actually more explicit and more direct about their protection of family than Sharia is.
Valuable, then say that. Say that you don't think it's valuable, so we know. But otherwise, I'm bringing objective arguments, and you haven't responded.
Yeah, and guys, again, families involved. With the family that he's talking about involves having like a whole bunch of concubines, 4 wives that don't get to have any choice in who they're with, that have been given to their husband against their will because of the father, this family and that family decided this thing. Yeah, I mean, especially if you're talking about children, right? It involves child marriage. This is the family that he's defending. Yeah, we are for family, Daniel, but the families that we support are superior to the family structure that you support.
To any of my questions.
Kick it over for a 5-minute response from Harris Sultan. In case you didn't see it in the live chat, there is a poll, folks. Feel free to take that poll and go ahead, Harris.
It's funny that you say no obligation to join jihad. How convenient.
And Nikki saying, do you think he is being honest in his head with his arguments? I genuinely do think so. Yeah, I don't think he thinks like he is lying. Yeah, I don't think he assumes that he's You know, and somebody has to be very clear that it has to be so obvious that somebody is lying for me to assume that. Like, I try to assume that people mean what they're saying.
For you, yeah, but where's the longing to work for your God, work for your religion, to spread the word of Allah? Where's the longing for that? No.
What do you mean? Where's the longing for what? Like, okay, again, Harris, this is such a bad argument. He's spreading Islam more than most people, more than the vast majority of Muslims out there, more than 99.999% of Muslims out there. Daniel is spreading Allah's word. Look at this. Look at Harris's criticism. Look at this.
It's funny that you say no obligation to join jihad. How convenient for you, yeah? But where's the longing to work for your God?
Where's the longing to work for your God? He's doing that as you are speaking, Harris. That he's doing that through this debate.
For your religion, to spread the word of Allah.
To spread the word of Allah. Look at this video, got 43,000 views. He is spreading the word of Allah in his. I mean, I don't think he's doing a good job, because more people are like being shocked by what Islam stands for through what he's listening to. But from his perspective, he is spreading the word of Allah more than most people.
Where's longing for that? No. Yeah, that nice.
I mean, everything he does is because of his longing for that. I don't understand what you're talking about, Harris.
Comfy couch is much better than why go for jihad?
What should he do with his couch? Should he make his chair uncomfortable while he's spreading the word of Allah? Like, he is spreading Islam through his videos and through doing debate with you, and his couch is comfy. Okay, Daniel, introduce some spikes to your couch, I guess, or your seat.
I don't know, I understand. You didn't praise ISIS, I know that, but you did praise Taliban. Why don't I move to Botswana or Haiti? Well, because human rights is not the only thing. It's just a part of the.
Yes, Harris, fantastic, perfect comeback by Harris Sultan. Well done. Human rights is not the only thing. We want human rights, but we also we're in favor of economic prosperity. Childhood education. Like, if you have children and there's not good education for your children there, you might not want to move there. Access to good healthcare, access to good legal system, clean water. There are many things that are important. Human rights is one of the things we care about. It's not just because we defend human rights, that doesn't mean that's the be all and end all of everything we care about.
The package, it's not the whole package. So there's so many other things that you want to get. Botswana and Haiti probably don't take refugees either. And why would you not want to go to a country where you can maximize pleasure and you live your life to its maximum?
Right. Perfect response by Harris.
So I think that was easy.
See, guys, I'm not anti-Harris. I can acknowledge when he had a good response. He's like, and he's making fun. He's like, yeah, that was easy. Like, you making it seem like Daniel's going like, what are you talking about? No, that was a perfect response. He's saying you're saying why we're not moving to Botswana when they have a good human rights record, because that's he answered you in just one sentence, because that's not the only thing you care about. And Daniel's making this face as if like, what are you talking about? That was a perfect response, Daniel, and that was an easy thing to respond.
Where you can maximize pleasure and you live your life to its maximum. So I think that was easy to respond and take that long. Anyway, now let's talk about.
Yeah, Daniel is like, Harris is like, I just destroyed all your points with just one sentence. Yeah, it didn't take that long.
About the rights Sharia gives to women. I'm sure you have a script written for that too, because you knew I'd bring that up. Needless to say that their statement is worth half of that of a man, meaning they're not equal. Quran 2:282. They get half of the inheritance compared to the male counterparts. Quran 4:11. Female captives can be used as sex slaves, but above all, the biggest setback for women, especially Muslim women, is that their male counterparts can physically discipline them, as Quran 4:34 instructs. Forget about how Muslims interpret this verse, but its true manifestation can be seen from one of your own videos, where once a Muslim, not an atheist, not an ex-Muslim, a Muslim who hadn't turned off his compassion switch, like you have told you, this is not how Muslims treat women like you do. And you replied to him by asking, don't you want...
So this is good. Harris is bringing up wife beating. Wife beating is one of the things that is not based on the hadith. It's completely based on the Quran. So it is, and it's so clear and so obvious that there's anybody who even attempts to make it seem like it meant something else, they are either completely ignorant about the Quran or the meaning of the Arabic text, or they're being completely dishonest about it. It's one of the most clear commandments in the Quran that wife beating is not just allowed. A lot of people are like, you're allowed to beat your wife in Islam. That is not correct. You're not allowed to beat your wife. You're commanded to beat your wife. It is not something that in Islam, in the Quran, is introduced as an option. All right, it gives you, if your wife is and it's not if you, and a lot of people are saying if your wife is disobedient, you get to beat them. That is not what the Quranic verse says. It's if you fear disobedience. So it's even before disobedience. If you are concerned, if you fear that they might become disobedient, right? Then you first don't talk to them, and then if that doesn't work, you abandon them from your bed. And then the third step is that you beat them. Not you have the option to, not that you're allowed, you're commanded to beat them. So please, please, please don't go around and say Islam allows you to beat your wife. It doesn't allow you. It commands you. That's a major difference. With slavery is allowed. Islam allows you to have slaves. With wife beating is not allowed. It's not just allowed. It's beyond that. It's commanded.
Want a woman who obeys you? Yes, you need an obedient servant, not an equal life partner with whom you build a relationship of trust, love on the basis of equality. Yes, you have your own worldview of preserving family and marriage and fertility rate and all that. Is this how you want to do it? You know what? Probably better if human race goes extinct. You build it upon how much she obeys you. Cook me dinner. Okay, husband. Wash my clothes. Okay, husband. If you fear disobedience from her, you can beat her up as per the Quran.
See, even Harris is saying it wrong. If you fear disobedience from her, you can beat her up. No, it's not that you can beat her up. It's that you should beat her up. Oh my God. Let me see. Quran 4:34. This is an important difference. Please, people. Please. Wait, is it? Why is this 434? Not 4. Not just the. Oh my God. Is it -34? Is that how I bring it? Nope. 4:34. 4. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Let me get 2 of the most famous translations. We go usually we look at Sahih International and Pictal. Where's Pictal? Where are you, Mr. Pictal? There we go. Those are the best ones. The 2 most famous ones, right? So this is 434. This is I will read the Sahih International one, the last part of it. Okay. So, but those wives from whom you fear arrogance in Sahih International it says arrogance. In Pictal it says rebellion. Okay. First advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them. And also it says lightly, but remember, look, the lightly is put in brackets because there is no mention of lightly in the Arabic text. Sahih International just decided to add lightly, even though there is no lightly, because they know how bad this looks. So they were trying to soften the blow by making it, well, not literally. I mean, literally, actually, yeah. By adding lightly here. Everything you see in bracket is not actually in the original text. So, for example, if you read the Pictal version, which is a more accurate translation, it says scourge them. It doesn't say lightly. Here, the verb here is va'adribuhunna. So that translates to as finally strike them. There's no mention of light. So yeah, and this is not you can strike them. It says strike them. It's a commandment. This is not an option.
Societies that build upon concepts like human rights will outlaw this because they say human rights, not man's rights alone. My partner or wife will simply say, go cook your own food. And I'll be like, okay, honey. In your article.
Okay. Guys, the alternative to not beating your wife like this is not the the better version of that is not letting your wife speak to you like that. Okay, that's not this is why we have a problem with endorsing modernity, because because some people might think like endorsing modernity and better human rights means that when your wife speaks to you like that, that you just like you're like, okay honey, like no. If your wife talks to you like that, tell her that that was the last time she gets to talk to you like that. This was the last time she raised her voice to you like that. If you ask your girlfriend or wife or your significant other or your soulmate, like, hey honey, can you cook me something? I'm hungry, and she yells at you like that, go cook your own food. You need to tell her that that's not allowed in this relationship. What the hell? Okay, let me be clear. Unless you are into being a sub, and even if you're into being a sub, you keep that for sexy time, okay? But you don't let that influence the rest of your relationship. You don't. That's for the bedroom, okay? Even if you're into that stuff, that should not affect. Your wife shouldn't be able to talk to you like that. You tell her like, this is not okay. You can't talk to me like that when I'm actually making a simple request. If you can't do it, that's fine. You can let me know. Look at this. This is such a cuck.
My picks will outlaw this because they say human rights, not man's rights.
Guys, this is important. I'm not, because a lot of people who are on side like against our values, they might think like, oh my God, this is such a pathetic, weak position for us to have as men, that your wife gets to talk to you like that, and you're like, okay, honey, okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have talked to you like that. I shouldn't have asked you to make me food. Like, people are like gonna look at it like, really? That's what I have to defend if I'm against Islam? Like, that doesn't seem good. Like, no, what the hell?
Look at this. My partner or wife will simply say, go cook your own food, and I'll be like, okay, honey.
Okay, honey, really? Really? In response to somebody talking to you like that, you will be like, okay, honey? No.
In your article, my sister.
Guys, again, don't. This is the problem with a lot of like leftists as well. They are so triggered by a lot of, rightfully so, by so many of the, barbaric and backward values of right-leaning religious people. Then in an attempt to fix that and adjust it, they go a little bit overboard. Okay. And they're like, women are always right, and women should, I always like say yes to everything they say, and it would be so wrong of me to expect like them cooking, or like, oh no, they should never clean the house, I should be always cleaning the house, I should always be cooking, and a happy wife, happy life, always everything they say goes. Like, guys, no, this is overkill. This is definitely overkill. Oh, you're like, people, you're saying, yes, that is the response, else you get beaten around the head. If your wife raises your hand on you, you better end that relationship. You either go and fix that, bring a professional and make it clear that you're not going to tolerate this, and if it happens ever again, this relationship would end. Unless, again, I always have to clarify, unless that's your kink and you enjoy being beaten up by your wife, and if that case, just keep it during sexy time. I'm not talking about that situation, okay? Other than that, you should make it very clear that that's not okay. Yeah. Black Angel saying there's a middle point between beat her up and okay, honey. Yeah, guys, and also this is not like, you might think like this is not an important thing. This is one reason why a lot of people think like right-leaning people are right or religious people are right, because men, again, if you're not like a man type, I'm not saying men should always be strong. If that's not your personality, then just accept the way you are and be happy with that, right? But men who do not find it in their personality to just be submissive like this, they think that they're being promoted these ideas that this is the way you should be, and it just doesn't match with their personality, and I don't like that, and you're just creating so much you're creating a situation where they're making Islam appealing to them, or they're making right-wing ideologies appealing to them, because you're telling them that if you exert any form of authority or power, that is toxic masculinity, that is you not knowing that this is barbaric and ancient, and this is wrong, and this is like, then women are always right, and you should just listen to your wife and accept everything she says at all times. And people are like, well, I don't like that. And therefore, like, oh, is that being modern? I guess I don't like being modern. I guess we have to go back to tradition, I guess.
You were talking about violence against women, and you said people who commit violence against women, you would only say that don't.
And guys, also, I do think, like, I'm also I know this is kind of hilarious to you guys. I do also think that some men that do enjoy being submissive, and also women who enjoy being submissive, make sure that doesn't take over all of your life. Like, make sure you have a time and a place for that. Because if you're like, oh, I'm a submissive woman, and then your man tells you that, oh yeah, don't put you shouldn't be saving money for your college, and you should be spending that on everything I say, and you're like, yes, master, I will, like, no, you shouldn't like let that creep into other parts of your life, right? Like, if you should make sure that there's a time and place for it, and you know that the dominant, whoever is the dominant in a relationship, and you're enjoying the sub-dom relationship that you have with each other, that is, you're not letting that influence the rest of your life in a way that makes your relationship completely unhealthy, right? There are certain places that you have to be like, yes, I enjoy my man having this dominant role. I don't know, like some men enjoy their woman having a dominant role, but you have to have some independence in some areas of your life when it comes to your future, your career, your health. When it comes to raising children, you can't be like, I'm going to have no say just because I enjoy being a sub. Like, no, you have to have a say. You have to be able to communicate with your husband or your wife about your role in that relationship beyond you can't let your kink stuff influence everything in your life. And I know some people actually do let their kink stuff influence everything in their life, and that's not healthy.
Leave them in a room with you, which is a respectable position to take. But honest, is it according to your worldview? Is it honest? Would you beat up the second caliph, Umar bin Khattab, who beat up Abu Bakr's sister when she wouldn't stop crying? Aisha even forbade Umar's vagabond, what's his name? Anyway, whatever his name was, from entering her house. But he said, go in and bring me the daughter of Abu Quhafa. Hisham was his name. Went in and brought her out, where Umar bin Khattab gave her a number of blows, as recorded in Ibn Hisham, page 137 to 138.
Okay, you're quoting Ibn Hisham for what Omar apparently beat women, according to Ibn Hisham. What is the problem with that, guys? I don't know what Daniel thinks about this quote in Ibn Hisham, but Ibn Hisham is Sirah. Ibn Hisham is not like authentic Sahih Hadith, Mutawatir Hadith. So I don't know why we're quoting Ibn Hisham as if that is Islam. Am I wrong about this? Is this part of Ibn Hisham like supported by some authentic hadith, or is this just Sirah? Is it?
There are actually quite a few stories where Umar actually acted like a total tool. For example, once Umar saw a Persian slave girl wearing a scarf that belonged to Anas, and Umar gave her a number of blows, saying, don't assume the man is a free woman. Al-Albani, in his book, Al-Halil, volume 6, page 204, declared the narration as perfect.
Okay. Albani. Okay, so Albani declaring something as authentic is not as strong as Bukhari or Muslim considering something authentic, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good to consider, because he is considered somebody that gets to authenticate hadith. Like that does make a hadith a lot more noteworthy. So that's fair.
Once Ashad bin Qas went to stay at Umar's
Puya saying, isn't Ibn Hisham one of the oldest sources that exist? Yes, but that doesn't mean that Muslims think like the fact that it's the oldest, it doesn't mean that Muslims think it's 100% authentic. Like, in fact, they argue a lot of it isn't.
House, and he woke up in the middle of the night when he heard Umar beating the hell out of his wife. When he tried to stop Umar, guess what Umar said? Umar said, Prophet, peace be upon him, told me never ask a man when he's beating his wife. Sunan Ibn Majah, 1986. I want to know.
Yeah. Which one was that? Was that the authentic one?
What would happen if you were left alone in the room with Omar? You like to say that you don't want to be left alone with those people, because I'm assuming that you're not going to sit down and...
I don't know if Daniel thinks that narration is correct or not. I wish he would comment. He wouldn't comment on it.
Play Monopoly with them. You're going to probably give them some of the taste of their own medicine, or would you not? Or you might just worm your way out of it by saying, well, he was the enforcer of Allah's command, and so also...
Well, okay, Susanna is saying that's what I was going to say when I said, yeah, because I was going to say what Susanna just said here right now, but here's why I didn't say it. So let me read what Susanna said. Susanna says, I feel like Harris got a little sidetracked by stories about the Sahaba during this segment and didn't drive it back to the Sharia itself. I mean, but the issue is that when Omar said, I heard Muhammad say this, okay, and if that's a part of the hadith, I don't know which hadith that was. If it's a Sahih hadith, and it's quoted Omar. I mean, Omar is considered a reliable source of hadith, right? So if Omar says Muhammad said something, that would be and that chain of narration is good and everything, and all the other standards applies. That would make it Muhammad saying something, and that would make it Sharia. So I know Sunnis don't claim that Abu Bakr, Omar, and Osman to be completely infallible, and not everything they do is completely okay. So you can't say because Omar did it, then it must be therefore 100% correct. But if Omar says, I heard Muhammad say such a thing, that would basically be, and if that chain of narration is completely meets the standards, then that would make it a hadith that would be Sharia. Right? Does that make sense? Correct me if I'm wrong about this. Again, I don't know what this chain of narration is and what this hadith is, or if it's authentic or not. But...
Sure. If that's the way you want to go, I'll just leave it to the people to decide which world they would want to live in, because the society I live in ensures even a criminal doesn't get tortured to extract information.
You got it. We'll go to a 5-minute response from Daniel. And a couple of things, folks, shortly, just a little bit here, we'll be going into the open dialogue. And
Susanna is saying, talking about what Muhammad said is obviously relevant to the Sharia, but Omar beating up some woman is not necessarily. Yeah, but if you listen to what Harris specifically said was that Omar did this, and then when they tried to stop him, he said, I heard Muhammad saying that when you're beating your wife, you shouldn't stop a man. So because of that part of the story, all of a sudden that makes it Sharia related, right? However, I don't know how authentic. I haven't heard that part. Did he quote the hadith that he's referring to? Because I haven't heard of any authentic hadith with that story. Like, is that from the Sirah or is that from an authentic hadith?
And also, just did a poll. Interesting to see. We asked what people...
It's very important if you're actually going to be quoting something that is not the Quran, that you very much highlight where you're getting this from, which hadith this is, and you need to you really need to highlight the fact that this is authentic hadith and considered a legitimate source of Sharia law by all schools of Islamic thought. Like you can't really just, that's a very important, every time you're not quoting something outside of the Quran, you need to highlight that very clearly.
Identify as, we had 41% identify as Muslim, then 36% atheist, other 11%.
Wait, what? How many percent Muslim?
Identify as Muslim. Did a poll. Interesting to see. We asked what people identify as. We had.
So these are the viewers of this debate. They're asking them what they identify as.
41% identify as Muslim.
Wow, the majority is actually Muslim. That's very interesting. I thought it would be atheist.
Then 36% atheist. Other 11%, and then Christian was 10%, which we're excited about having that kind of variety of people. We do hope you feel welcome, no matter what walk of life you're from. And with that, go ahead, Daniel. The floor is all yours for 5 minutes.
Okay, again, Harris is just gish galloping. He's throwing everything out there. I'm going to actually respond with arguments. I'll just respond to this wife beating argument. Simple question, Harris. Do you believe women should be subject to laws If you do believe that women should be subject to laws, then that means you believe women should be subject to all kinds of violence, including being beaten, jailed, even executed. That's what it means to be subject to the
okay. He's taking the idea that that a lot of people might think this is completely ridiculous, that the fact that women are subject to law, that means that they should be beaten. But I mean, the way he's phrasing it makes it seem actually ridiculous. But I think what he's referring to is the fact that laws come with the potential for violence, because without the potential of violence, laws wouldn't have any meaning. Physical violence, and that physical violence does, because you without a state and without a policing and a military to be able to execute that law, the law would just be a piece of paper, and enforcing a law requires the potential for violence. And the way that the violence is defined is anything that would involve coming in contact with your body, like even if it's just putting you in handcuffs, pushing you into a car, moving you to a jail, getting you to your court, putting you in a jail and locking the door so that your body is like cannot move freely, right? All of this would be considered forms of physical violence. But he says beating. There are many forms of violence that are not beating. So when you say we have laws, so that means it's okay to beat women, that would suggest that he means that laws necessarily mean just beating, but that's not necessarily what laws indicate. But let's actually let him make his argument before I criticize it.
If you do believe that women should be subject to laws, then that means you believe women should be subject to all kinds of violence, including being beaten, jailed, even executed. That's what it means to be subject to the law. So
first of all, yeah, but that is what being subject to the law does. It does mean that, but it's not women, it's anybody. Okay? It's not targeting women in a way that it's not targeting men. There's so many wrongs. Okay, I have to try to hold back because there's so many things wrong with what he's saying, but I have to let him make his point. Sorry.
There really is no difference between Islam on quote unquote wife beating and human rights on this issue. Both Islam and human rights are in 100% agreement that women are accountable if they break the law. And that means Islam and human rights are in 100% agreement that women should be beaten.
No. Oh my God, this is so bad. They're not. Okay. Let me actually, I have to write down my points or else I'm going to forget it. They're not in complete agreement at all. Okay. Just because when you say, because we have laws, that means the potential for violence by the state exists for these laws to be able to be enforceable. That does not mean that this is the same as wife beating being allowed by your husband. Okay. So his argument is that because we, the defenders of human rights, we acknowledge that laws do exist and laws are a thing, which is very interesting because he was earlier in this video, he was suggesting that the people who are for human rights, they are incomplete for maximum freedom, for limitless freedom with no limitations. Now he's acknowledging that we actually believe in laws. So which one is it, Daniel? Do we believe in limitations or we do not believe in limitations? So here he's contradicting himself earlier, and he's acknowledging that the people who actually defend human rights, we do believe in laws and we do believe in some limitations. We don't think there should be limitless freedom for everything. Okay, so now he acknowledges that we do believe in laws, he says that because that acknowledgement of those laws comes with the assumption that states should be able to use violence to uphold those laws, therefore we are for violence. We accept that if people cross some red lines, violence could be used against them. Therefore, we should be also accepting wife beating, because what is that other than punishing somebody for breaking the law? All right? There's so many things wrong with here, and I don't know where to start, okay? Let me start by saying that first, the women who are they're not breaking the law. That is not the law that they're breaking. Okay, that is your husband being afraid of you being rebellious. That is not breaking of the law. Okay, and if a woman breaks the law, just like a man breaking a law, what we think the solution to that is, first of all, we don't go from 0 to 100. We don't think like, oh, beat the hell out of her because she was rebellious. Okay, the violence that we endorse by the state is a type of violence that actually discourages violence. We want the potential for violence to be there by the state so that there's less violence, right? We don't want the state, we want to find ways for the state to not use the violence, right? But you are aware of the risks and the potential for consequences. And that violence we're talking about is not the police coming and beating you up. We're against that. We're talking about the violence that we're talking about is like them coming, putting you in handcuffs, putting you in a police car, something like that. That would be in response to actually violating the law, not being disobedient to your husband. So don't say like, oh, you agree with us because you are, don't say like we are who supporting human rights because we think that the breaking of the law should be met with consequences. So we are accepting some form of violence. Don't say like, so this is the same in Islam where you said breaking of the law. There's no law being breaking here.
The only difference are in 100% agreement that women are accountable if they break the law. And that
if they break the law, being disobedient to your husband is not breaking the law. Okay. So first of all, he's not representing what the action that needs to be met with consequences. He's misrepresenting it. So they're not in 100% agreement. We allow consequences for breaking the law. You want consequences for being disobedient to your husband. Those are not the same thing. And also the punishment is not the same. And by who and how is also not the same thing. Okay. We have realized the defenders of enlightenment values, the defenders of modernity, the defenders of progress, defenders of human rights, is that using violence to bring peace has to be done in a very limited and a controlled context, done by a government that is limited in how it gets to use the violence and under very certain conditions after things have been analyzed thoroughly by people that their expertise is evaluating the legality and the illegality of what has been done, and people who study the best prevention methods, and also by a state that is accountable to very rigorous human rights standards that comes its execution method based on harm reduction rather than revenge, and based on recovery, based on reducing harm to society, and on a very controlled environment. Again, not that people are going to say, oh, well, United States hasn't done that. Police actually beat up the people, and the justice system is wrong, and people are getting imprisoned unjustly. Yeah, and we're against that. Okay, what we endorse is not a husband deciding that you violated the rule, and then him with no legal expertise, with an emotional person, with no understanding of whether this is causing more harm than good, having a person that is not been elected by the community, that is not being limited by a body of observers, he in a private house with no accountability, being able to beat his wife. That is not what we endorse. The violence that we endorse is a threat of a limited violence that a cop, for example, gets to put his hands on you, to put handcuffs on you, put you in a car, right? And only if he takes his gun out will have to be because of reducing the threat to himself, like fatal threat to himself or other people. It's not going to be like if he takes any weapons out or any physical violence, if it's any beating done, it has to be justified way beyond like, oh, I was disobedient. It has to be for stopping a greater harm that is happening immediately at that time. And even when he does that, it's going to be reviewed by an independent body of people. It's under very strict guidelines on when you get to do that. That's what we endorse. Again, I'm not saying that people are like, oh, well, that's not what's happening in the US. Again, I'm not saying I'm defending US police. I'm saying that's what the standards that we endorse. This is not at all analogous with what you're suggesting. In fact, this is not even analogous with what Islam is suggesting, because he's like, oh, you supporting laws, that means that we're supporting enforcement of law inside a household by a husband with no standards and no like body of people that could hold them. There's nothing that makes this rigorous, like no right to defend. Like, guys, even like, look, compare what we endorse, compare it to what they are endorsing, right? We are saying somebody that has committed the worst crimes in humanity, they do not get to be tortured. They do not get to be physically abused. They get to have a lawyer to defend them in a court of law, right? The people who want to punish them need to bring evidence. There needs to be observers, and even if they're proven of guilty, there could be only a very strict limitations on what the punishment could be, right? Even with somebody that has committed genocide, the greatest crimes against humanity, these are the conditions that we allow violence. And the violence that we're talking about is not torture. The violence that we're talking about is the guard putting their hands on you and making sure that you're going from cell jail, from your cell to the court, and the court back to the cell, right? That's the type of violence that we're talking about, right? And you are comparing that. You're saying that is equivalent to a private house with no body of observers, no legal observers. Like, is the situation like, okay, I'm gonna beat my wife because I fear disobedience? Does she get to hire, like, would there be a legal team analyzing the husband at that situation before he gets to execute that punishment? Like, and against what? Against breaking a law? No, this is not. He's saying, look, Daniel is saying that's completely the same. How is that the same? Just because you're saying he's using the fact that in both situations we're using the word violence as if to make it seem like these are completely equivalent. It would be kind of analogous to me saying, like, in a prison, right? The guards get to use violence. They have batons. They get to defend themselves. They get to use violence when needed to move prisoners around. So given that we're endorsing in the prison system, given that we're allowing the guards to use violence sometimes to move prisoners around to defend themselves, then we should let the prisoners do that as well. It will only be right. You have already justified the use of violence. So given that we have already justified the use of violence in the prison system, so why can't the prisoners, if they see some misbehavior from other prisoners and something has been unfair, why don't we allow the prisoners to use violence against other prisoners in the jail system? We have already acknowledged that violence is okay in certain conditions. Well, I mean, just because we have acknowledged that violence is okay in certain conditions, that doesn't mean that all use of violence is okay under any condition. And another thing that is interesting is that, well, actually, let me leave this part for the next. Hold on. But let me see, actually, if I misrepresented him. Just 1 second.
To laws, then that means you believe women should be subject to laws? A simple question, Haris. Do you believe women should be subject to laws?
So we agree that women and men and everyone else should be subjected to laws. Okay.
Do you believe that women should be subject to laws? Then that means you believe women should be subject to all kinds of violence, including
not all. So that's a misrepresentation. See, again, he's using the concept of laws means that accepting the use of violence. He used the word, guys, this is why you have to be mindful of. He used the word all. No, all. That was sneaky, Daniel. Sneaky. I see what you did there. You stopped. I almost didn't notice it. He snuck in the word all in there. No, not all. No, we're actually limit. We limit the use of violence. We have very strict conditions of the use of violence. and not all violence, very limited violence, and different violence for different situations, and all way more limited than just beating somebody for being disobedient. He just snuck in the word all. I didn't even notice that the first time. Good thing I went back.
Believe that women should be subject to laws, then that means you believe women should be subject to all kinds of violence.
No, not all kinds of violence. Not all kinds of violence. Not all of them. Very limited version of them. And not women. You're saying women. It's not women. It's everybody. Again, this is another problem. The violence that you're endorsing is specifically were women. The violence that we're endorsing is under very limited conditions, under very strict rules, with observers that are supposed to be experts in law and human rights and everything like that. And it's not directed towards women. It's for everybody. And it's not conditioned on someone's gender. It's a condition on someone's actions. And that those actions are a lot worse than just being disobedient to your husband.
Including being beaten, jailed, even executed. That's what it means to.
We're against execution, by the way, here. We don't endorse capital punishment. Even for the worst kind of people, we don't endorse it.
Be subject to the law. So there really is no difference between Islam on.
There's no difference, really? How is there no difference? How could you come up with this conclusion? There's a world of difference between the type of violence that we endorse and the type of violence that you endorse.
Unquote, wife beating and human rights on this issue. Both Islam and human rights are in 100% agreement that women are accountable if they break the law. And that
it's not women, it's everybody. It's everybody is accountable. You are subjecting women to different standards and different rules. We're saying equal laws for everybody.
Means Islam and
don't act like we're in agreement. No, we're not. We're not associated with your values.
Human rights are in 100% agreement that women should be beaten. We only
no, women should be beaten. Like, guys, laws that endorse the fact that laws exist, the violence that we endorse doesn't just mean that somebody gets to beat the crap out of you. Doesn't mean somebody gets to raise their hand of you. The violence that we're talking about is completely different. The violence that involves physical harm to somebody, that type of violence is only in the form of self-defense. The other violence that is, if somebody commits something illegal, okay, the violence in that situation that we endorse, it only involves you being physically moved to the place that you need to be. That, the fact that your body is being touched and moved around, that is actually a very low version of violence. That is considered violence. He's using the fact, because a lot of people don't know that that's considered violence. Because a lot of people don't know that, they think when we say laws means that you have to endorse violence, people think like, oh, therefore laws just means that you get to beat people. No, that's not what we mean by violence.
Differ on who should do the beating. You say only the state can punish women. Only the state should have a monopoly on all power and authority. Islam says no, power should be distributed across.
Okay, first of all, it's not only the state, it's the right type of state that is adhering to human rights. So it's not just like, oh, we love the state, we're like bootlickers of the state. State knows everything and state is right and state should be able to punish him. No, okay? The state that is limited by its people, the state that is accountable by its people, okay? We're the state that is the bootlicker of the people, not the other way around. Like, we're not going to be like, oh, state says so it's okay. A very limited state, a state that is very much limited by human rights standards. And we think that is the best. Yes, we do want to monopolize. We don't want more people to have access to violence. It's like only the state. Yes, we do believe that violence should be limited to a state authority that is accountable to a very strict set of standards. We don't want everybody to have access to violence as a tool. I mean, I guess the state could also make guards, like security guards, and certain people with certain credentials have access to a very limited form of violence as well. And other civilians, when it comes to self-defense, that could be legal, right? But again, it would be the state that would allow that, and would be a higher level of violence would only be allowable by a state that is very much limited by human rights standard. We think we have realized in a civilized world that this is the best way to reduce violence, by making it only monopolized, give it only accessible to a group of people that use it on a very strict conditions, on a very limited state. We think making violence available to a wider group of people is not a good, healthy, doesn't produce a very healthy society. Okay, especially given that these people are not going to be observed and be held strictly to a high standard, and also the punishment could be for crimes that are not even crimes, right? So yeah, we don't want to give a license to violence to everybody. We don't want to do that. We don't want to completely remove violence, the potential for violence, because that is what is needed to maintain order. We just want to be very responsible and limited in who and how gets to exert it. Does that make sense?
Kinship groups, and this means
yeah, Johnny's saying Armin forgets the people who are watching. What are you talking about? If you don't tag me, I'm not going to read your comment. I'm gonna ban you if you keep making nonsense like that. I don't know what you're saying.
That the patriarch has authority to physically discipline members of his family, including his wives, if they violate important norms and values. Now let's ask women. If you violate the law, shouldn't you face consequences? And if you have to face consequences, who would you rather mete out those consequences? The cold iron fist of the bureaucratic, technocratic state, or the
What are you talking about, Daniel? You also just endorsed the state punishing women and men. Okay, hold on. What do you say?
Consequences. The cold iron fist of the face consequences. If you violate the law, shouldn't you face consequences? And if you
violate the law, Daniel, we're talking about the endorsement of wife beating is in response to them just being disobedient, the fear of disobedience to their husband. Okay, here, look. Even if women were violating the law, even if it was the actual law, it shouldn't be their husbands that punishes them for it, because the husbands are not. You're saying that the husbands are in a position to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner at the same time, with no legal expertise, like oh, I'm going to be the police at my home. Let's say, for example, it was a violation of the law, an actual violation of the law. Do you want a judge and the police to be responsible, or a husband? Like, oh, hey, let's not get the police involved. Like, let's get the husband involved. And why? Because of the husband's legal expertise, and then the punishment is going to be beating somebody that has no understanding, like somebody emotional, somebody that is like not in a position to make the judgment of what the punishment should be. Are you serious? And doesn't that break the family? Imagine if your wife breaks the actual law. Instead of getting the police and the state involved to punish her, you want to get a husband to punish her? Wouldn't that be the breaking of the relationship that you have between a wife and a husband? And you're misrepresenting the situation. This is not a breaking of the law situation, because, Daniel, if it was actually breaking of the law under your Islamic system, it would be the state that was involved. The husband will get involved only when there's a disobedience or a rebellion of the wife, not when she's breaking the law. So you're misrepresenting Islam right now. Under your system, if she breaks the law, the actual law, it would be the bureaucratic state, the iron fist of the state that was involved. If a woman steals, for example, under an Islamic state, it wouldn't be like, oh, okay, the state is not going to get involved. It's going to be the husband that punishes her. No, it will be the state. Under Islam, it will be the state. So don't make it seem like this is like an enforcement of the law by the husband. The husband gets involved when she's just being disobedient. This is not a violation. This is not the law that is being broken here. I don't know if he's being dishonest here or just doesn't understand Islam. Does Daniel not understand Islam? Am I misrepresenting him here? Be honest with me, guys.
You have to face
I wish there was more Muslims in the live chat to hold me accountable if I'm misrepresenting him.
On all power and authority. Islam says, no, power should be distributed across.
Power. It's not power that should be distributed, Daniel. You're saying, see, he's clever with his words. He's saying power should be distributed. You're saying violence should be distributed. You're saying more people should have access to violence. We're saying no. Violence, the use of violence, we know that removing the use of violence is unreasonable. That's impossible. there needs to be some form of violence by some authorities. We're saying that should be reduced to people that are completely, that have a higher standards and are completely beholden to a very strict observing group of people that limit them. We think that's the best way to do it. So guys, he's so clever. He's like, power should be distributed. This is violence that is being distributed.
Have a monopoly on all power and authority. Islam says, no, power should be distributed across
more people should be able to have violence, and people that don't know how to use it.
Kinship groups. And this means that the patriarch has authority to physically discipline members of his family, including his wives, if they violate important norms and values. Now let's ask women. If you violate the law, shouldn't you face consequences? And if you have to face consequences, who would you rather mete out those consequences? The cold iron fist of the bureaucratic, technocratic state, or
again, the iron fist of technocratic state? Oh my God, so scary. How is it under Islam, Daniel? Like, it's the same goddamn thing. It's the same thing. The technocratic state, what we want to make it a good state, so when it's used violence, it use it in a limited way and justifiably. Again, he's misrepresenting. He's making it seem like the disagreement is how should we punish women when they're violating the law. That is not the disagreement. Both based on our view and Daniel's Islam, if they're actually breaking the law, it would be the state that is involved. The husband is involved in something else when it comes to punishment. Isn't it Muslims that keep telling us Sharia is not just about like laws? It's also about how to live your private lives. This is one of those examples. This is Sharia telling you how to live your private life. This is not about your wife breaking the law. Do you think like if you under Islamic State, if your wife murders somebody, the state is like, let the husband take care of it. We're not going to get involved. No. This is actually something we agree when it comes to the state being involved. If it's murder or stealing or something like that, both of us agree that the state should be involved. Our disagreement is over like the husband shouldn't be beating. Yeah, you're misrepresenting. You're completely guys. I don't think I'm misrepresenting him. I don't know which one it is. Either he doesn't know what Islam teaches, or he's being completely dishonest here. I think Daniel. I understand Islam more than you, Daniel.
Or the person who loves you the most in the whole world. The other important.
Oh yeah, like loves breaking of the law. I just murdered a man and buried him in the backyard. Dear husband, like, okay, we don't need to call the police. I'll just beat you a little bit, and we call it. Who do you want to involve? The police or the person who loves you?
Important difference is that with the technocratic state, there is no higher authority. If the authoritarian modern state wants to persecute a particular woman, she has no recourse beyond the authority of the state. But in Islam, the husband is the state. There is no the cold iron fist of the bureaucratic technocratic state, or the person who loves you the most in the whole world. The other important difference is that with the technocratic state, there is no.
By the way, let's be careful here. Let's be careful. The person who loves you the most is not necessary. It's actually not the case when it comes to Islam. One thing Daniel wants to keep doing is pretending that Islam is a defender of family. One thing that has been improved about families in the modern state is that families actually have become more about love rather than economic and political and power plays, right? Like this whole idea of marriage for love is a modern concept. That was not marrying people because you love them is not the thing. It was not why you married them before. Like that was not the excuse for marrying people. This is completely a modern romantic view of marriage that has become popularized. So if you want to keep pretending like, oh, your husband is the person who loves you the most, then hey, Daniel, I guess you're endorsing modernity. Thank you very much. This is what modernity improved about family and marriage. So you're welcome.
Higher authority. If the authoritarian modern state wants to persecute a particular woman, she has no recourse beyond the authority of the state. But in Islam, the husband is not the highest authority. If he is unjust to his wife, or if he causes...
Wait, the state is not the highest authority?
But in Islam, the husband is not the highest authority.
Are you telling me that in Islam, if your wife murders somebody and the state wants to come in and punishes her, you're like, the husband is like, I don't recognize your authority in my household. I'm sorry. Like you don't get to, I'm sorry. She's my wife and my authority is above yours. You don't get to enter our house. I have authority here over you.
If he is unjust to his wife, or if he causes serious abuse, then the wife can take him to the Islamic court and get.
Wait, I thought you said the husband has higher authority. How can she take him? You're contradicting yourself. Maybe I misheard this. Hold on.
Authoritarian modern state wants to persecute a particular woman, she has no recourse beyond the authoritarian modern state or the person who loves you the most in the whole world. The other important difference is that with the technocratic state, there is no higher authority. If the authoritarian modern state wants...
Technocratic is not as... Why do you keep saying technocratic as if it's a bad thing? Technocratic means experts are in charge. So what is the issue? Am I misunderstanding here? You know, why is he like, is your Islamic state not going to be technocratic? Oh, okay. Susanna is saying I did mishear this. He said the husband is not the highest authority. So I did mishear this. So that's not a contradiction. Let me see.
To persecute a particular woman, she has no recourse beyond the authority of the state. But in Islam, the husband is not the highest authority.
Okay. Thank you, Susanna. I did mishear it. Yeah. So see? We catch our, thank you for holding me accountable. Okay, good. So he said the husband is not the highest.
If he is unjust to his wife, or if he causes serious abuse, then the wife can take him to the Islamic court and get paid damages. Or
unlike countries that have human rights, when the husband beats your wife and the woman has no recourse, and there's no, like, if in countries with human rights, if you call the police and tell them that your husband is beating you, they just like, well, I guess this is what you get for endorsing human rights, I guess.
Or she can complain to her extended family and make her case so that other...
Wait, so you're saying wife beating is okay because if the wife beating is excessive, she gets to complain to the state or her extended family? Oh, I see. Am I getting it right now? So that's okay then. Wife beating is okay because if it gets excessive, she gets to complain about it. I didn't know that. Am I understanding this correctly? Hold on.
Courts beyond the authority of the state. But in Islam, the husband is not the highest authority. If he is unjust to his wife, or if he causes serious abuse, then the wife...
Okay, so you get to be... So it's okay that in Islam you get to beat your wife. I mean, you have to beat your wife if she's disobedient, because if it gets too serious abuse, you get to complain. Why didn't you tell me to begin with? I would have been so in favor of wife beating if I knew when it gets excessive, she gets to complain. I didn't know that. You should have been more... You guys, you should have told me. You should have told me. I guess, okay. Go on then. Beat your wife. We know that she gets to complain to the state if it gets too much.
Wife can take him to the Islamic court and get paid damages. Or she can complain to her extended family and make her case so that other patriarchs can intervene and actually punish her husband. This is an organic system, and we see similar systems in all traditional cultures, Native American culture, even Christianity, read the Bible, even Judaism, read the Bible. They all have these kinds of...
Whataboutism. What about... Guys, some people are saying I'm pausing too much. And you need to make him finish his entire point. I can't do that because he's making 20 different points in over a very short period of time. I'm not going to be able to remember all the points he made and then go back and respond to every single one of them. He's making like 5 points every 5 seconds, so I need to pause and respond to the point he made. Like right now, in 2 seconds, he just made another fallacy. He just did a whataboutism. I can't just make him... Let him go past that without pausing and responding to it. He's just saying other religions have this as well. Yeah, guess what? They're all wrong.
Of rules. Nowadays, they've kind of reformed all of that. Islam is the only religion that's really honest on this. Look, let me put it like this.
See, like he made another point. I need to pause again. He's moving on to another point. In another 2 seconds, he made another point. How could I not pause? He's moving to something else. Don't tell me not to pause. He's like Islam is superior because the other religions who are pretending like they don't have wife beating, he's proud of the fact that Islam is keeping wife beating in it, right? He's like, we are being honest about it. Like, and I mean, yeah, he's being honest about it, and that's why we enjoy highlighting it. Guys, this is why it's fun to highlight Daniel's debate with ex-Muslims, because I wanted to highlight the Apostate Prophet debate with this other guy that he just debated. And honestly, it was such a, I mean, Apostate Prophet just like completely won. It was so easily won by Apostate Prophet, and the other side was so weak. I don't even know if it makes sense for us to review that debate. I think I'm going to review something else because Apostle Prophet was so good in that debate, and the other side had nothing to offer. So it would be just like us being like, "Yay, Apostle Prophet." Let me know if you want me to review that one. But it was, at least with Daniel, we get some juicy stuff like this.
Is it possible to run a corporation without the possibility of physical discipline? No. You have to give managers in these corporations the right to beat their employees. How do you beat your employees? Well, if the employee violates the norms of the workplace, they get fired. And if they...
Look at Harris's face. Look at... Oh, wait. I almost missed the comment. I'm just going to pause it here because Harris looks shocked. I'm going to rewind it to see what Daniel is saying. But let me actually make sure I don't miss this one. Black Angel is saying, so then the Sharia police arrives, looks at the woman and decides if it was one punch too much or if it was still okay under the Sharia, mashallah. Yeah, I mean, there's no clear indication in what excessive means, which makes it open to interpretation. This is why you should never let religious people pretend like they have objective morality. I mean, first of all, the Quranic verse itself never says that you have to beat them lightly. It just says beat them. And then when they say, like, they bring hadith that says that, oh, it has to be lightly, it can't be excessive, there's no indication of what excessive means, okay? And they're like, well, how do we decide? Like, oh, we have to interpret that ourselves. Like, tell me again how you have objective morality when it's subject to interpretation so much. Yeah, so that's ridiculous. And yeah, Susanna is saying Harris's face. It's like that was my face too. Yes. Guys, let me just tell you what Daniel is doing here. You're saying, like, even like, actually, let me for the person that said don't pause, let me just make him make this entire argument.
Nowadays, they've kind of reformed all of that. Islam is the only religion that's really honest on this. Look, let me put it like this. Is it possible to run a corporation without the possibility of physical discipline? No. You have to give managers in these corporations the right to beat their employees. How do you beat your employees?
As soon as he said you have to give them the right to beat their employees, Harris's face. Just look at it one more time. But sorry, I have to watch this one more time.
Is it possible to run a corporation without the possibility of physical discipline? No. You have to give managers in these corporations the right to beat their employees. How do you beat your employees? Well, if the employee violates the norms of the workplace, they get fired. And if they do not voluntarily comply, security will be called to remove them by force.
See, this is the, I don't know if I want to call it dishonest, either dishonest or stupid thing that Daniel keeps saying, okay? Like if you are asked to leave a corporate, like an office space, or get fired, or if you're a bank and you're causing like a chaos, the reason why a lot of people would not do that is because they know that they will be physically removed. And technically, the definition of being physically removed, that is physical violence, okay? But just because the word we use for that is a form of violence, and the word for beating your wife is also used as violence, that doesn't mean these things are the same, Daniel. One of these things is not like the other, okay? Beating somebody is not the same as you having the expectation that in this environment, if I do certain actions, for example, if I take something off my desk and throw it at my boss, there will be security guards and they will physically remove me from this area. That is not the same as you being able to beat your wife. That is not the same thing. And a lot of people, they're shocked. Like you saw Harris being shocked. A lot of people are shocked because they don't know that technically, yes, putting your hand on somebody and removing them from that area, that is technically also violence. That's why people are like, what are you talking about? I mean, you don't get to... Daniel, let me fix this for you. Let me fix you're saying that that's equivalent. The equivalent nature of that, the equivalent example to that would not be you being fired and refusing to leave the office and them calling the security and moving you from the area. That is not equivalent to what you're endorsing in Islam. The equivalent to that in an office space would be the CEO of the company, your boss, for example. Let's say your boss fears that you might be disobedient. Like you're like, I think Johnny over there is, I feel like his attitude is like his tone in his voice. He's not disobedient yet, but I feel like he's getting there. He's like getting there. So I'm gonna like give him the silent treatment for the first day, and the second day I will move him out of his desk. I would say like, you cannot be at this desk. Like, you have to work on the floor. You can, or at the desk that you don't like, somewhere else, right? Let's say he had a corner office, and now he has like in a cubicle, right? And day 3, we're gonna beat him because of this disobedience. Let's say actually let's make it even more fair for you. Let's say he was actually disobedient. Let's say he was supposed to do a project. It was due Friday, and he's like, you know what? I'm not gonna do it. You didn't give me enough time. I'm gonna give it to you on Monday. He disobeyed his boss, and the boss is like, okay, we're calling security. Security. What for? What? For being disobedient? And we're not going to physically remove him from office. We're going to beat him. We're going to beat him up. That is the equivalent of what you're endorsing in Islam. Don't be like, just because if somebody is not leaving a place that they don't have a right to say, we call security and they physically remove them. That's the same as a husband beating their wife. That is not the same thing, Daniel. That is not at all the same thing. The equivalent would be beating employees because they're being disobedient to their boss. That would be the equivalent example. Does that make sense, guys? Is it making any sense to you guys what I'm saying? Oh, somebody's saying then you concede the violence is okay. Where have you been? We already addressed that. I don't know if you're talking to me.
Managers have to have the right to beat their employees. If they didn't have the right, you couldn't have a hierarchical.
It's not the same violence. It's not the same level of violence. It's not done by the same people that we endorse. It's not for the same reason that we endorse. And it's not done the way that we endorse. And it's not being limited the way we endorse. Just because technically that is violence and this is violence, it doesn't mean that they're the same thing. Again, you have to be so stupid not to understand this. It would be as if you're saying that the prisoners in a prison should have access to committing violence against each other because the prison guards have access to violence as well. That's how dumb this argument is.
Organization.
And they should be able to torture each other with no observers and no limitations, the prisoners. And it's the same authority. If you endorse violence for the prison guards, then why are you not endorsing violence for everybody? That is how dumb this argument is.
Islam recognizes this about family. Patriarchy is hardwired into our DNA. Neurobiologists, psychologists, they all acknowledge this. Women are naturally hypergamous, which means they're attracted to men who are stronger than them and higher status than them. Men that...
Okay, this is why you need individualism. That is true. What he's saying is true. Okay, but that, first of all, that doesn't mean that you can beat them. Most women do enjoy stronger, more confident men. But let's look at what was missed here. Actually, what he's saying is not true. Look here.
They can fight for DNA. Neurobiologists, psychologists, they all acknowledge this. Women are naturally hypergamous, which means they're attracted to men who are stronger than them and higher.
What was missing from what he said? What would make what he just said more true? I mean, true, because what he said is false. There's a word. There's this small little word that is missing over there. There's a small little thing that he should have included in what he just said that would make what he said accurate. Come on, guys. I'm going to let you guys guess while I read what Brad is saying. Brad is saying is corporal punishment. He's trying to conflate corporal punishment with punishment that sometimes results in violence, but violence is not the punishment. Yeah. Yes, that's actually a very good point, Brad, because the violence that we endorse, even like by security guards, is not a violence that you're doing as a form of punishing somebody. You are trying to physically move somebody for somewhere that they shouldn't be, or you're trying to defend yourself. We don't agree with we don't endorse physical punishments, physical violence as a form of punishment. We do accept like imprisonment as a form of punishment, but physical violence is only used as a way to defend. That's not, we don't use it. Yeah, physical violence is not a punishment. Yes, Susanna and Meme God got it. Good job. Meme God and Susanna got the word that was missing. Okay, was most. It's not women that like stronger men. It's most women like stronger men. That means there are some of them that don't, and some of them that don't care, or some of them that might even like the opposite. Okay, and this is why we're not collectivists. This is why we're individualists, because we acknowledge the existence of women that might don't care about that. We don't come up with standards of how all of society needs to be living like, because given that when you say most women like that, we want to make a society where people have the option to not live by the standards that would be best for most women. People get to pick and choose. People get to decide their own lives. People get to decide what's best for them. If most women like something, that means there's many of them who don't like that. So you don't get to decide, come up with a standard, come up with a model for how everybody should be living like, because the existence of those people who are in the minority. This is why we're individualists. This is why we don't assume. Most women being in a certain way, most women having certain preference is very different from all of them. But you make it seem like all of them are like that. Hold on.
Higher status than them, at hierarchical organization.
This is why the people who overdo the fixing of this make it seem like, oh, traditionalists assume that all women prefer strong men. So we're going to overcorrect and saying, no women like strong. Women don't care. Real women don't care. Women shouldn't like strong men. Women should like any type of man. No, most women do like strong men. That's okay. Just be you. Just do you. If you like strong men, just enjoy strong men. If you don't care, then don't care. If you are a man that enjoys being strong and assertive, there's nothing wrong with that. Enjoy that. If you're a man that don't enjoy that, then don't enjoy that. Just be like, no, I don't care. I don't care about how much strength I'm projecting. If you don't care, then don't care about it. If you do care about it, if that's part of your identity and enjoy that's part of your identity, just enjoy it. See how easy it is? Don't let these traditionalists tell you that there's something wrong with you acting strong and confident. There's something wrong with you not acting strong and confident, but don't let some people that are overcorrecting tell you that there's something, that's toxic. No. Just be, your identity is like your clothes. You just wear what is more comfortable. You just put it on and like, this feels right. I like this. I enjoy this. I enjoy being, you enjoy being strong. You enjoy being confident. Does it fit well on you? Then wear that. Don't let traditionalists or these like postmodernists tell you otherwise. But anyways, we got off track. See, this
voluntarily comply, security will be called to remove. You couldn't have a hierarchical organization. Islam recognizes this about family. Patriarchy is hardwired into our DNA. Neurobiologists, psychologists, they all acknowledge this. Women are naturally hypergamous, which means...
See, he said women are naturally, instead of saying most women.
They're attracted to men who are stronger than them and higher status than them. Men that they can be dependent on. Men that are...
See, like a lot of feminists, for example, hashtag not all, but some feminists who enjoy stronger men, more confident men, think that they are giving into gender expectations, and they want to pretend like that's not what they're into. Okay? No, if you are actually into that, it's okay. Hey, if you're actually into strong men, that's fine. You're allowed, okay? Fighting against gender expectations, that doesn't mean that you should deny yourself the pleasures that are the norm. It means that you just don't make assumptions, that you just discover what you like.
Authorities over them. If you take out the patriarchy, this actually significantly reduces female attraction to their husbands. And they have studies on this where they ask.
No, the solution is just not to assume, just to discover. The solution, like if you take out patriarchy, no, what you're taking out is gender expectations, right? And you're just going on a path of individual discovery. Like you neither have to tell women not to expect men that they enjoy to be strong, or you don't have to tell them that, to expect them to be strong. Just discover what you're into. It's very easy, guys. This is easy. It's easy. Individualism is easy.
Women, if they are more attracted to the macho man patriarch or a man who is at their same level in terms of size, strength, and status. And all women, including the hardcore feminists, prefer the higher status male. So
all women, Daniel, you should go back to the studies that you just quoted. They say majority of women. It doesn't say all women. The studies show that the majority of women are like that. It doesn't say all women like that. Don't say, like, see, this is your mind on collectivism. This is your mind on traditionalism. This is your mind on collectivism. This is your mind on conservatism. This is your mind on Islam. You treat everything in black and white. If most women are like that, it means all women are like that.
If you promote egalitarian marriage, such as in human rights, you basically are ensuring less attraction, and that means less stable marriages. And this is exactly why marriages in the modern West have collapsed. Because
I do acknowledge, though, that some people on our camp go overboard with these things and overcorrect, right? Like they tell you that you shouldn't have, like there are some people, there's some parents that if their daughter enjoys a goddamn Barbie or her favorite color is pink, they try to actively brainwash her into not liking pink or not liking a Barbie. Like, let her enjoy the goddamn Barbie, okay? And you're like, my son should play with the Barbie and my daughter should play with the car. I'm like, why not just let them pick what they want? You're basically the same as the traditionalists. You're the problem on the same problem with you. Like, see, we individualists, we know that people get to enjoy whatever they want to enjoy, right? Like the traditionalists would be like, my son will play with guns and cars. My daughter will have everything in pink, the entire bedroom in pink, Barbies and dolls and tea sets, okay? The postmodernists will come and say, I don't accept that. I don't accept tradition. I don't accept gender norms. And they're like, I will make my son play with the Barbie. I will make my daughter play with a car. I will paint my son's room pink, and I will be damned if my daughter touches anything that is pink, right? So they're like, what the hell are you doing? The individualist would be like, what do you want? You pick your toys. You pick your favorite colors. If your son picks a Barbie or a car, you're okay with it. If your daughter picks a Barbie or a car, you're okay with it. You do you let them do whatever they want. Okay? That's what the individualist would do.
Because they're egalitarian. Islam says, no, if you want a strong society, you have to have strong families. And if you want strong families, they have to be patriarchal. And if they're patriarchal, that means the man has authority. And if he has authority, that means he has the power to physically.
So guys, what I'm saying, for example, is I acknowledge that if you let your kids just do whatever they want, more often, if you don't try to brainwash them because of your politics or your religion, more often your daughters are going to go pick cute and cuddly little dolls and Barbies or whatever, and your sons are more likely to go pick up guns and cars and stuff like that. More often, it's just naturally going to happen. But because sometimes it's not going to be like that, sometimes your son is actually going to prefer playing with a Barbie and your daughter is actually going to prefer playing with a car. There's going to be those situations. So don't assume, because sometimes it's going to be the other way around, just let it happen, whatever it happens.
Maintain order. This is all a coherent, holistic system, and it's backed and underwritten by human biology, human psychology, that is universal.
See, this is the genetic fallacy, assuming that just because something is natural is better, all right?
Across all human...
No, genetic fallacy. I'm saying the appeal to nature fallacy. Sorry, I said the wrong fallacy.
Societies, it's hardwired into us. That's why this is an objective argument, Haris. You can't really understand that. I hope your followers, these Christians who are listening, these Hindus that are listening, I hope they're following, because this stuff is in their books as well, in their cultures as well. They've reformed all that and threw it out because they're cucking to modernity. But Muslims are not going to do that. We don't need to change our religion because it's revealed from God to the creator of human beings. The creator of human beings knows our psychology, knows our biology, and that's why he has revealed this Sharia for the benefit and flourishing of humanity. And all of the statistics are proving this. You can't even respond to a single one.
Go ahead.
So this is exactly why we have a problem with religion. It's collectivism, because your so-called God has mandated how we should all be living all the same way based on how the majority of us are, and even it didn't accurately describe how the majority of us are anyways, but even if it, let's say, was based on science, even if it was based on statistics, you're taking what is appeals to the majority and you're thinking therefore everybody should be living like that. That is completely fallacious. We're unique, we're different. Yes, even if a majority of us have certain desires, that doesn't mean that you get to mandate how the rest of us live. Some of them are different, some of us are unique, some of us have different paths to life. That is, again, how could you deny that the maximizing happiness requires giving people more options, more opportunities to find their path, as long as they're not harming anybody? Like, it's obviously the best way to increase utility in a society. Okay, so I'm just going to end this here. I'm just going to read a few more live chats. Aren't you in the end just debating on levels of subjugation of women within all of Islam? What is the point of debating different levels of subjugating women? I don't know what you're talking about. We're talking about the difference between Islam and modernity. This is not debate between different levels of Islam. So maybe I don't understand what you're saying. I don't know what your point is. I might have missed it. All right. Okay. So I spent 3 hours in this, so I think that's about time. Unless you guys want to say anything in the live chat. Guys, make sure you like this video. I'm going to continue finishing this debate. And then after this, I watched the Apostate Prophet versus, I don't know who that other guy, doctor, was, debate. That debate was a clear indication that somebody having a doctor next to their name doesn't mean much, unless we could prove otherwise. Like, Apostate Prophet was way better than I could have imagined. He was so organized, he was so methodical, it was so perfect. Like, I think Daniel had mastered the art of, and it was such a big shame, because Apostate Prophet came with such a structured, very clear, very easy to understand method of explaining his positions in his debate. And it was a perfect way of starting a debate for an audience that is not even familiar with Islam, completely tying the problems that we have in Islam with the core teachings of Islam. It was so perfectly done. I've never seen anybody do it so perfectly, the way that Apostate Prophet has done it. So I was so eager to see what the comeback to that would be. But unfortunately, the challenge to Apostate Prophet was very weak. Like, we had one of the best performances I've ever seen in an ex-Muslim versus Muslim debate, but it was met with something. It was nothing. It was like the reaction to it was like this complete, it was just an explanation of, you don't know Arabic, you don't have the credentials, and let me read you some Quranic verses. That was all we got in response. Like, I was hoping we get something stronger in response, because I wanted to see the strong performance by Apostate Prophet. I wanted that to be challenged, to see how Apostate Prophet would go on and respond to the challenges to get. The performance by Apostate Prophet was so great, and I wish it was just a little bit challenging. And just to be fair to the doctor on the other side, even though he was, I think this shouldn't be an insult anymore, because this is objectively so. I feel honestly, how could I be polite? He wasn't very intelligent. This is the most polite way I could say it. Is there a more polite way for me to say he wasn't intelligent? Can somebody give me a more polite way? Even though I think he was not at all intelligent, I'm trying to avoid using insult. He's very nice. If you could ignore the horrible values that he was believed in, and he indicated at the end, he's a nice guy. He's like a nice fella. He's he's charming, and he was very nice to Apostate Prophet. He was very cheerful, not at all. A lot of these Dawah guys, and also some people on our side, come and are very hostile. They're making it personal. This guy was really I think that needs to be acknowledged. Okay, the guy, what's his name? Dr. What? He was very, very nice. He was a nice person. He didn't make it at all personal. He kind of wanted to come. He one of the things that he wanted to highlight constantly was that I'm your friend, we're friends. And I think that even though I think he wasn't intelligent, I think the fact that he was nice and kind, I think that's more important than being intelligent. So I want to mention that's something that we need to congratulate and recognize and appreciate. I think if there's any hope in Muslims and ex-Muslims reaching with each other, it's not going to be through us making logical points with each other and winning our debates. I think having these debates and being able to keep them friendly and indicating to the audience that we get to have these passionate disagreements while staying friends with each other, I think that is more important than actually making good points, right? So I want to say, like, even though that other guy wasn't very good at debating, I think he was very good at showing that Muslim and ex-Muslims don't have to hate each other just because we are against each other's, values and beliefs. I also want to acknowledge how respectful Apostle Prophet was, and I could see that it was hard at sometimes. People are saying there will be a second debate. Okay, I'm going to watch that as well. Apostle Prophet, guys, it's really, if you're watching debates and you all of a sudden notice one of us is being disrespectful, honestly, when you hear people being stupid and saying stuff that is just like, how could you, what? We're emotional creatures and we get frustrated, and sometimes it's hard for us to, you watching the debate like, oh my God, Armin is being like, Armin or Harris or AP or somebody else is being disrespectful. They shouldn't be disrespectful. But not being disrespectful, us being emotional animals and being frustrated with why somebody's not getting what you're saying, is harder to do when you're under that frustration and you're like trying to perform a debate and stuff, right? But I could tell that Apostle Prophet managed to keep it respectful, and I could see that sometimes it was challenging to keep it, and he had to remind himself, like, okay, this was dumb, what I heard. I think I might be misreading what just happened, but sometimes I could feel like what I just heard was the dumbest thing I've ever heard since for a very long time. But I have to maintain a friendly relationship. But I think he did a good job. I think Apostle Prophet was very, very friendly, very respectful. A couple of times he caught himself not being respectful, and he kind of like backtracked and he was like, sorry, this is what I mean. And a couple of times he caught himself just laughing out loud, and he was trying hard to stop himself. and I could tell that he was making the effort of keeping it completely respectful. And it came across as him, like it was so obvious that he was trying to be friendly. And that was I really appreciated that. Like, guys, a lot of you say like, oh, how could you say, Armin, that you're being disrespectful given that the other person believes this and that, or given that this is what the other side would do. Well, go look at what Apostle Prophet did in that debate. Tell me that was not a win. Tell me that if you actually, no matter who your opponent is, and no matter what their values are, and no matter what they do, if you are able to keep it respectful, you watching a debate, tell me, go watch that debate by Apostle Prophet. Tell me that doesn't look like a win when you actually manage to keep it respectful. That is such a win. That is such a, it just comes, you just look so much more mature. And I'm not saying more mature than your opponent. Like, I'm hoping your opponent is respectful as well. So both of you look like you're mature. Like, I'm not saying like be mature so people pick like, oh my God, you won the debate because you were more mature than the other side. No, I'm endorsing both of you being mature. People will like both of you. Guys, we are not going to be able to get everybody. We're not going to be able to get all Muslims to become ex-Muslims, okay? That's not going to happen in our lifetime, okay? So what our goal is with all the people who will remain Muslim, is to show to them that our disagreements doesn't have to make us enemies. That is also one reason why we do these debates. So when you're respectful in this debate, you're showing Muslim like, hey, look, we still get to be friends even though we're against each other's ideas. That is a more important goal here. Anyways, I have to go. It's funny because a lot of people who criticize me for saying that Harris should have been more respectful, if Harris was very respectful, and I think Harris will be more respectful in future debates. I think so. Because let's be fair to Harris, this was his first debate. Okay, this was his first debate. I think you can't expect him to do it perfectly, right? And I think Harris is going to learn a lot from any mistake that he might have made in this debate. And I think one of the things he's going to do is going to be more respectful next time. I think. And so many people are attacking me for being too critical of Harris, for saying that he should have been more respectful. But I think the same people, if Harris was respectful, they would have been like, oh my God, look at Harris, how respectful he's being. Look how mature he is. Okay? The same people would have loved it and said so if Harris was more respectful. And again, I'm not saying if I criticize Harris, doesn't mean I would have done better. Okay? I might have done worse than Harris. I might have even lost my mind and become even more disrespectful than Harris. Okay? Just because I criticize Harris, that's not me saying I'm better or I would have done better. Okay? I get to criticize him. Yeah. Well, that's not a defense. Never mind. Scratch the last thing I said. Oh, Susanna saying it wasn't his first debate. Okay, he's not doing so many debates. I thought he said that was his first debate. Oh, that was his second debate, right? He said he done only one other debate. Yes, he said he's only done one other debate. Still, he's new at this. He's still that good, in my opinion. Okay, no, I'm the guys. No, it's like Armin is honest. You are so perfect. You have no idea, guys. I'm telling you, all these things I criticize other people for, I am so guilty of them myself. Like, I have never assumed that just because I'm saying that somebody should have been more calm or more respectful, never make that assumption that I'm saying that I would have done that. Okay, no, I make these mistakes myself. I'm not at all. Oof, I am. No, not at all. I'm right now. I'm imagining all the things I've done in the past, and you saying this is just making me. You're so wrong about this. I'm not at all perfect. Nobody's. Anyways, I gotta go. Love you. No, I like you very much. Thank you for. I'm not saying I love you guys because that's cultish behavior. Okay, so I like you very much, and I appreciate your time here. So thank you so much for your time here, and make sure, please, to like the video and share the video if it's safe. Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.